and bad argument.
You want to hear my opinion, McCurdy? Shut the fuck up.
You're doing the same thing you did back in Goldfinger.
Shut your mouth.
You're doing the same thing you did back in Goldfinger.
Shut your mouth.
Make good arguments.
Shut your mouth.
Make good arguments.
Shut your mouth there. Shut your fucking mouth there.
Welcome back to RANKED. I'm CHARLES.
I'm RYAN.
I'm Scott.
I'm Nathan.
My dick.
If you're just joining us, we have ranked each of the Bond movies. You can see right below me. This episode's mission is to find a place for AVTAK. But you guys ruined my little game. A View to a Kill wraps up Roger Moore's time as 007 with a bang. And a bang, and a bang, and a bang. But not a literal bang, because that would mean he failed his mission against Max Zorin, a psychopathic Nazi experiment baby and KGB agent gone rogue. Silicon Finger, he's the man with the Microsoft touch. Hellbent on executing Operation Main Slam Grand Strike to take out the San Francisco Bay Area and destroy the U.S. microchip manufacturing hub of Silicon Valley, so that his microchips will be more valuable. I conservatively estimate 10 times. Bond's mission is to stop Zorin, make his septuagenarian Hitler-Heiling geneticist father figure kill himself with dynamite, get the girl, and ultimately dance into the fire. Dance into the fire.
All right, enough of that. We're good. We're good.
Come on, dude.
Song.
We're good.
You guys never
It's a
want to
great
sing
song.
with me. That song is amazing.
Song's a banger.
He did well.
As the
It's
kids
so
say,
good.
called today,
Duran
it's a
Duran.
banger.
Did well.
So good.
So, trivia for A View to a Kill. 1985's A View to a Kill, originally titled From a View to a Kill, but quickly changed.
Lose from.
Doesn't begin with a pre-title sequence, but a disclaimer that Zorin Industries is fictional. This was due to a real company with a similar name, Zoran Industries, spelled with an A instead of an I, which ironically still exists and is headquartered in Silicon Valley, where they make microchips. What is also interesting to note is that the name Zoran, as the real company is spelled, is derived from the Hebrew word for silicon, Tozaran.
If there's a letter difference, there's no lawsuit, right?
When they made the film and they were creating when they wrote it, they didn't know that there was an actual company named Zorin. So they were like, the fact that it was a company that was also a Microsoft company and everything
If only
else.
they had the internet.
Yeah. They
What
didn't
is
know that,
internet?
so when they came up with the name, they were like, oh, crap. So then they had to put this disclaimer in the beginning of the movie.
So this company was active in 85.
Yeah. It was created in 81, still going on today, makes microchips.
Is there another story called From a View to a Kill, and that's why they dropped from?
I think it was just easier to say A View to a Kill than From a View to a Kill. But if you watch The End of Octopussy, they title it From a View to a Kill, and they changed the title to A View to a Kill.
And they also work it in the dialogue in a natural way. Yeah, there's no way you can say from in that scene.
What a view to a kill.
So speaking of characters named Max Zorin, he was originally cast to be played by David Bowie, but then he was dropped because Bowie didn't want to just watch a stunt double do all the cool stuff. So they got instead the talented Christopher Walken, who everybody loves to intimidate.
That's the most Walken delivered line in the whole movie.
More power.
Oh yeah,
It's like he
really
breaks
is.
character and just becomes himself in that
Yeah,
moment.
straight up.
Yeah, Tanya Roberts, the female lead, is playing Stacey Sutton, had played the main character in the last season of Charlie's Angels, but most people our age all know her from that 70s show as Donna's mom, Midge. Interesting enough, in an episode titled The First Time, Midge and Bob renew their vows, and all of her bridesmaids are former Bond girls, including Maude Adams, who makes a cameo supposedly in this film at the wharf dock scene. However, there's a lot of scrutiny behind this claim. So some people point out this one person in the background during that scene. But if you look at it
Coming off
carefully,
the
it's
bus?
not. also like it's on the bus or when he's walking.
Maud Adams
on
doesn't
the-
ride the bus,
dock.
bro.
No, they're all these people coming off the bus.
She played a fisherman.
Maud Adams' boyfriend is in one of the scenes, and
Oh.
Roger Moore is like, yeah, that was Maud's boyfriend, and him and Maud was visiting the set that day, and they were like, oh, we'll just be in the movie as background. So she was in the background, supposedly, but they may have just cut the scene that she was in or whatever. But anyway, yeah, Maud Adams was maybe in the movie, but no one's 100% sure on that.
Somebody would have found a screenshot by now and posted it.
There are
so.
screenshots that say, "Oh, this is Maud Adams," but some people have been like, "That's not Maud Adams."
Yeah.
So while we're on the topic of Bond girls, you can recognize the beautiful Ginny Flex as Alison Doody. It's her name, who plays the equally gorgeous Fräulein Elsa Schneider in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Cue the clip.
Touch me.
Not that clip. Not that clip.
Dude, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I have to say this, but who would not join the Nazi party if you could get yourself that
Oh my god.
Fraulein? I know.
She's the top of my list in this movie.
How did you know she was a Nazi? She talks in her sleep.
Which one are you talking about?
Jenny
She
Flex,
plays
dude.
Jenny Flex.
Remember when the bodies are floating by and she's
Yeah,
like,
she's the
Jenny!
dead
And, Bond's like,
It's too late. Leave her. There's nothing you can do.
I almost went into Connery. Yeah, Mayday, she's dead. She's fucking dead.
So speaking of
She was
Mayday, Grace
sexy.
Jones, actress, singer, and model, plays the henchwoman Mayday. Jones at the time was dating actor Dolph Lundgren, who was on set when a background actor didn't show up. So director John Glen put him in the movie as one of General Gorgol's. Gorgol's? Is that how you say his name? Gorgol's?
Gogol.
Gogol.
Every
Gogol,
episode, we're like,
Gogol.
goggles?
Goggles? I always get it wrong, but
Gogol.
he's the henchman in that scene when the general first shows up and he's talking to Zorin. You can obviously tell who it is, but yeah, he's in the movie.
He doesn't have a line, and I'm curious, when did Rocky IV come out?
Rocky IV, release date November 27, 85. So right at the same time.
It's interesting because he's so easy to spot out because it's like that's Dolph Lundgren. Like,
Yeah.
and then but he doesn't have a line, so you almost think that this is earlier to where he wasn't a big actor. I mean, Rocky IV is a big deal.
Yeah. And then speaking of General Gogol.
Gogol,
Gogol.
like
Said it right this time.
Google, but Gogol.
Gogol.
Google.
I swear there's an R in there.
Gogol.
There's
It's Gogol.
Gogol.
So Gogol's female agent James Bond rendezvous with was originally intended to be Agent XXX from The Spy Who Loved Me, Anya Asimov.
No way! I was gonna say, guys, wouldn't that have been cool had the KGB agent been XXX?
The bubbles tickle my Tchaikovsky.
This must be the inspiration for the Austin Powers scene, right? With a lot of vagina or whatever.
Yeah, but of course Barbara Bach was too busy with her man, conductor of the Shining Time station, Ringo Starr.
I'd like to be under the sea in Octopussy's garden in her bush. It was clearly motivated by XXX reprising a role. And without her reprising a role, it does kind of feel like something's missing. Like, why are we wasting our time with him banging this really sexy Russian woman? For Bond to accomplish this task, he takes the tape from the Russians. In rewrites, he could have simplified it, but just having Bond listen
make
in.
the tape or something.
Yeah, it does show that the KGB is trying to take him out.
That's the point of that scene, though. But it's like, but I see what you're saying. It's like you could have simplified it, but I do like that it ties the Russians more into the story, which makes it a little more interesting for me. Like Honor Blackman and Diana Riggs, before him, we have another former Avenger from the British television show joined the cast in Patrick Macne's performance as Sir Godfrey Tibbett. I saw this casting in much the same way that Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood describes TV show casting back in the 60s, where they would get a star from the 50s to be like the villain of the week for that movie or in that episode. And then that character would be basically facing off against this other character. But instead of facing off, they're teaming up. So in this one, we have Simon Templar's The Saint, which was Roger Moore, teaming up with another British secret agent, John Steed from The Avengers, which is Patrick Macney. And then this one I'm going to steal from Scott. I don't know, Scott, if you know this story or not, but the theme song to A View to a Kill, it's probably one of the, to me, it's like the second best Bond song next to Live and Let Die as far as just memorable, and everybody remembers this one because it was
Up
a big
to this
80s
point,
song.
or
I think up
in
to
general?
this point.
Okay.
Up to this point, it's like the second best or
Up
one
to
of
this
the
point
best.
for sure.
Because I'm always
Bond
going to want the
songs.
one, like, I will always opt for, like I said before, Bond songs are really sexy, you know, big horns and all that. But
Yeah, but this,
I prefer the high energy ones that get you pumped up.
Sure.
And
This one was just
gets
so
you moving.
80s.
So good.
it's what I mean by that is just as popular music for the time, and even now, like people still remember this song. Particularly, it still plays on the radio today. But it's View to a Kill was written and performed by British new wave band Duran Duran. So the story goes, bassist John Taylor was at a party with Cubby Broccoli and drunkenly asked the producer, "When will you get someone decent to write the theme song?" And that turned
And Shirley
into...
Bassey was right there, and she threw a drink in his face.
Yeah.
And that turned into, of course, them getting the job. So lesson learned, always ask stupid questions when you're drunk to bigwigs, because you never know, that
always
might
do.
get you your next job. You never
I
know.
always do.
And then finally, this is the last film for not one, but two reoccurring actors. First and foremost, Roger Moore, who was 57 when they filmed this movie. And I had to check, Daniel Craig is 53. So he was the oldest actor to play Bond. And then, of course, secondly, you have Lois Maxwell, who had played the character of Moneypenny for 14 films. It makes sense that they were like, hey, let's get rid of Lois, or like, you know, retire her as an actress on the, you know, get someone to replace her as well.
Just get rid of her. I don't know. I need a cigar
it
to
makes
chomp
sense
on.
in my mind because you want to get somebody who's close in age to Bond, and it worked when Roger Moore was there. But now that she's also very old as well, it's like, well, let's get two actors that are about the same age.
Like we said before, it's adorable when they're together, but you just can't jump to Dalton and have wrinkly old Moneypenny. You have to start fresh, as you have to with everything periodically if you want it to keep going. Again, like I said before, Moneypenny's whole thing is, it's like she's what Bond would have if he dropped out, if he retired. It's like his one backdoor option to having a normal life is Moneypenny. And you can't have that if Moneypenny's like 50 years old.
That's why a lot of the girls in this movie don't make a whole lot of sense for, like, it's just like, oh, they're all so young looking compared
Moore
to
had even
Bond.
said that he was appalled the fact that Tanya Roberts' mom was younger than him.
Yeah.
And like, that was the point where he's like, I
pretty
gotta
rough.
stop making these movies. Like, that's...
Stop paying me, just please. Stop bringing me back.
Yeah. So Tanya Roberts
No,
is
I
like,
would please keep
really
bringing
young
me back. Please
this
keep
time.
bringing me back. Why would you
and he's
not?
like, I need
I'll
to...
keep doing them, but
either they need to write my characters super old, or I need to quit. And even Sean Connery, who,
He's
I mean, he was
Bond.
friends with Moore, had even said, he's like, Bond should be like 30, 35, and me and Moore are way too old. Like, we shouldn't be playing this.
Bond's
character
age is
anymore.
irrelevant. Bond should be able to pull whatever girl he wants whenever the he wants because he's Bond.
Yeah.
Period.
agreed on
Yeah.
a certain level.
I will say, though, that speaking of being too old to do stuff, stunt guys made a killing on this movie.
Roger Moore's hardly in this movie.
It's like 50% of the screen time
double.
is stunt guys, and
Oh
they
my
don't even care
God.
to hide it.
The scene I think we're all thinking of is when the top of the car gets ripped off.
Yeah, you
Like-
can see the wig.
The wig. One of the more blatant for me is the granddad's ashes. And it's like in one shot, it's just the stunt guy's back, and the stunt guy throws a vicious punch, and then they cut and Bond's handling the vase. They generally do a decent job of hiding stunt guys. In this one, they're like, fuck
Oh,
it, because
bad.
it's a stunt guy every 5 seconds.
bad.
So
Yeah.
We're past the day of ragdolls, and
Yeah.
but we definitely
Well,
see the
there's
stuntmen.
definitely a lot of rag dolls in this one.
yeah, well, there's two. There's two that are necessary.
There's even one point where you see Gogol's double is in the car, and you can tell it's a double and it's not him. When the Russian agent comes out of the spa and she walks into the car, and that's an exterior scene. If you look closely, that's not the same. That's not Walter Gogol or whatever or Kotel or whatever his name is. It's a double. And then when they cut back to the interior of the car, which is probably on the soundstage, it's the actor.
I need to make a point, at least building off that right now, because that's the only time it makes sense. Every single Bond film, they just make Russians look like idiots. All of
And
them.
cops.
They make them look like weak idiots.
How?
In that scene, they get the tape. Do you have the tape? Here's the tape. They put the tape in. He goes, oh.
Yeah.
They make the Russians
that
look
look.
like idiots.
Well,
In all these
it's
films,
American,
they
it's for
really
American
have.
and British audience, though. Like, why
Well,
would you
yeah,
make? Why would you make the Russians
Yes,
look
exactly.
good in a film that is very much tied to what was going on at the time, being the Cold War? So,
McCurdy, I fully fucking understand. I get it. But I'm just saying
but
they
you
make
saying
them
that
look
makes me
like
think you don't understand that.
No, I do. I fully do. But it's.
I mean, I get your point, though. Yeah, they make them silly,
for
but that's
one
also
film-
to make Bond look good.
For one
too,
film,
you
I
know?
want them to seem formidable, but
And
they
at one
don't.
point-
They never do.
Dude, we will get
we'll
there.
See. We'll get there.
We will
yeah.
get there.
Like
Oh,
Charlie said, we
but
will
we'll
get there.
I
get
can't
there.
wait to
We
get
can't
there.
talk about the future. The future is not here.
I want to pass it off to Nans. I don't know what it's called. I want to pass it off
Nads.
to
Did you
Nads.
just call him Nads?
I would call him Nads.
Nads, because he's
Nans.
got balls.
I want to pass it off to Nans, first time viewer. What did you think of the movie?
Like most of them, I definitely enjoyed like the first half or so, and then it slowed down. Overall, for the movie, meh. I enjoyed Christopher Walken. I enjoyed like Mayday and like just generally the bad guys and the plot, though, you know, it being a recycling of Goldfinger wasn't great. But I thought there was some cool stuff with like the blimp, and the plot was interesting and somewhat different and up to date.
It must be a bad movie if we only got one word. Normally we get two words. This time we just got meh.
Yeah, I would overall though I would rank it pretty low.
This is a lot of Goldfinger. It's almost a straight up remake, just without a nuke, but it still
Or a
has, you know, the
ripoff.
same explosive ending. But it fixes certain things I did not like about Goldfinger.
They have the same like miniature map of the plot
Yeah.
and explaining it to the henchmen and killing one
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
He even says,
Today, we make microchips from silicon, which is common sand, but far better than gold.
so it's like kind of throwing these up, you know, in a sense, like this is bigger than Goldfinger itself, even all the way down to the stud farm.
I really liked the horse stuff. I was like, oh, he's like juicing up these horses. Cool.
It kind of begins with a smuggling issue, just like Goldfinger. Even the cat's name is Pussy,
Yeah.
as in the galore kind. There's like a subtle Nazi connection. Like I know that Goldfinger, you know, he was a Nazi in real life and not in the movie, but there's still this Germanic quality to him where you can almost see like if you shrunk him down, he would almost look like Zorin.
But he's not German, right?
He's
is
KGB.
like-
Yeah, but he was created by the Nazis.
Dr. Karl Mortner, at your service. I am Mr. Zorin's breeding consultant.
His name is actually Hans Glau. During World War II, he experimented with steroids on pregnant women in the concentration camps in an attempt to enhance intelligence. The Russians grabbed him, set him up in a laboratory. He spent several years developing steroids for their athletes.
All this talk of steroid kids, and then there's Dolph Lundgren, who later beats up Rocky.
I must break you.
He killed him.
He dies.
Could Zorin be one of the steroid kids?
A physiological freak?
It's subtle, but there's like this implied genetic tampering, even with Mayday, because even when he says that line, it's like you're a freak or something like that.
And she picks up like a 200-pound guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's implied to also be a part of some kind of experimentation as well. So you kind of
Yeah.
see some kind of weird parallels. There's a part of me that where like, Charlie, I definitely agree with you at that. It does fix some of the pieces that seem a little odd in Goldfinger. Like the one particular one I know you're going to point out is the crime boss scene where he kills the crime boss. The first guy's like, I don't want to do this. And then takes him out and then he crushes them and kills them and then eventually kills all of them, which doesn't make sense. But in this movie, it's like, oh yeah, sure. I'll step out. The guy's like real polite about it too.
Would you wait outside?
If you'd like me to, yes. Excuse me.
No, he's not polite. He's like defiant, like, oh yeah, you want me to go? Okay. Excuse me.
Fine.
Excuse me.
I
Excuse
thought
me.
he was just like, oh,
You know.
okay. And then he walks out and then he gets thrown out. And then all the guys are like, so
That's
anybody
brilliant.
else want to quit? And then they're all like,
That's
like we
Max
cut.
Zorin gets the only Bond joke of the whole movie.
So, does anybody else want to drop out?
Yeah.
It's depressing because the other
Yeah.
ones are terrible. The other ones are...
Don't worry. It's all wrapped up.
Neither of those guards died, so I don't think that counts. And then,
There's a fly in his suit.
which technically fits within the criteria of a murder having taken place, and then it's a pun it's a pun on fly fishing, whatever. It basically wins by default, but Zorin steals the spotlight so far as Bond jokes are concerned.
Does anybody else want to drop out?
I think Zorin's an interesting character. I just don't think they utilized him well enough for that particular story, because they were like, well, we're trying to remake Goldfinger, so let's make it more like Goldfinger, where they had this really cool, like, oh, no, he's an experimental, like, psychopath, and he has high intelligence and maybe even like super strong, but we never really see that as much as I think we should. Like, we see the psychopathic nature of him, especially when he's killing all the guys in the mine.
Like, how is he not smart though? But is that what you're saying?
It's just like he's on a computer. I mean, he's keen, but it's like, I wish we could have seen a little bit more stuff with that. Yeah. And it's just like his whole motivation is like greed, where I'm like, okay, like it's just a very Lex Luthor-y.
But what about Goldfinger then? You talked up loving Goldfinger.
I do, but I
what's
think
the difference?
Here's the biggest difference.
Goldfinger speaks well. He actually has a point. He has a plan.
Hold on, Scott.
He carries it out.
How does Max Zorin not have any of those things?
This movie doesn't really. It's like he was experimented, and then he was a KGB agent, and then it's like greed. Like, he just wants money, but I wish there was more, like, had there been some kind of revenge or something else in there besides that I'm doing this with money. That's where I'm like, I get what you're saying, Charlie. Like, they do Goldfinger a little bit better in some aspects, but there's a part of me that's like, yeah, but it just feels like you copy and pasted rather than try to find a new story that's more interesting. And even though you create this interesting character, which I mind you, like, it's just exposition dialogue that a character says, that, oh yeah, by the way, Zorin was a genetic freak, and he possibly, like, they allude to, he's like, could he also have been one of these genetic freaks kind of thing? And then
here's the thing.
They don't do much with that after that.
I read what you're saying, but I think that's overpowered by the psychopathy. I think the fact that he, like, because Goldfinger was not they both love gold. He wasn't necessarily a psychopath. He just loved gold so much that it was greed.
This is gold, Mr. Bond. All my life I've been in love with its color, its brilliance, its divine heaviness. I welcome any enterprise that will increase my stock.
But it was an interesting plot twist where it wasn't stealing, it was the destruction.
Yeah, that worked to me really well.
I think Zorin being a psychopath is that twist to where it's almost like it's not even greed, because he doesn't need money. He just desires ultimate power. He just like more power.
More power.
I don't even think the money has anything to do with it. I mean, when he's just mercilessly killing everybody in like one of the greatest bad guy moments ever, he's laughing. I mean, even when he has a Joker-esque death where he's like,
he laughs at the end.
The guy's just nuts and power hungry, and that's where Goldfinger is a little more subtle. I think Max Zorin is awesome, and I think Christopher Walken is great as Max Zorin.
I'm not saying I dislike Zorin. I'm just pointing out that I feel like there was some missed potential there where they could have gone in a little bit more.
But like for him to get revenge, dude, like okay, he wants revenge against the West because of they won World War II or something. I think that would be kind of below Max Zorin. That would be almost too emotional. Like, Max Zorin doesn't have emotions. The guy is literally a psychopath because he's a genetic freak. All he cares about is power.
Except if you compare the two, Goldfinger had more iconic lines.
Take a fucking drink right now. Take a fucking drink.
Even
do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. Okay, we get it.
Yeah, but and so okay, I'm siding with McCurdy in the fact that this guy was a genius psychopath, right? But we barely scratched the surface. He had so much more potential than scenes where he went so so.
So?
What was he supposed to say? Did you accomplish the task? Yes,
something
I did.
More than so.
Yeah, but okay, then write a line right now. Like, what was he?
I'm not a writer.
Did you do it? Did you murder the guy? I don't.
Fair enough.
I agree with McCurdy. He was underused.
He's a good,
I don't know.
I don't know. Like I'm saying, it's a really interesting backstory. They say it in the dialogue, he's a psychopath, but how many other villains have we come across that have some kind of psychopathic tendency? And then this movie, we're just highlighting it.
But not officially, like not where they are literally like, a genetic creation gone wrong.
What's his face? Fish Hands. How is he not a psychopath? Or Drax is a psychopath? Like they're still doing these megalomaniac things. How does that not psychopathic tendency?
Those guys care about people.
I intend to change the face of history.
By destroying the world?
By creating a world. A new and beautiful world beneath the sea.
A new super race, a race of perfect physical specimens.
Max Zorin is such a psychopath that he's even willing to sacrifice Mayday just on a whim.
But Mayday and my men.
Yeah, a convenient coincidence.
Mr. Zorin, those men are loyal to you.
We haven't seen that yet. I mean, as we talked about in depth in the Moonraker episode, these guys are doing things that really aren't for their own gain per se, as much as it's some grand sacrifice towards some ultimate dream that is supposed to better things for everybody.
The only hope for the future of mankind.
Like gods, your offspring will return to Earth and shape it in their image.
But they do it by way of killing a whole bunch of people. It's the same argument as like, is Thanos a psychopath just because he kills a bunch of people? Or don't you believe that he actually is well-intentioned? The argument is just whether or not genocide is actually a noble cause, which obviously it's not.
And when we faced extinction, I offered a solution.
Genocide.
But random, dispassionate, fair to rich and poor alike. They called me a madman. And what I predicted came to pass.
Thanos, Stromberg, and Drax would all tell you that they're the good guy, but Max Zorin is just a bad dude who is only out for his own empowerment.
To me, it's just not as interesting as some of the other characters we've seen, and not that I don't like. And I think that's the problem. Is I think that between the character, how he's written, and Walken's performance, there's something really good there because Walken can perform. Like Walken's perfect at performing that psychopathic, crazy character. I just feel like, great, we got this cool character. Could there be more to what he wants other than to destroy Silicon Valley so he makes more money? I felt like there was something missing there that could have been explored. And I only feel that way because it's like, oh, this is a copy paste of Goldfinger. That's where
we're talking world domination. Like you own
it's not
all of the microchips on the planet and you run the planet. Jeffrey Bezos. Jeffrey Bezos. Come on.
I also think there's holes in that plan to just suggest that. So, like this movie wants you to know that, like, yes, Silicon Valley creates
Scott,
all the.
How are you not running the planet if you control all the microchips, especially microchips that are EMP resistant?
Magnetic pulse.
Yes, Minister. One burst in outer space over the UK, and everything with a microchip in it, from, well, the modern toaster to the most sophisticated computers and our defense systems, would be rendered absolutely useless.
We'd be paralyzed at the Russians' mercy.
Who's to say they can't make a mass-producing center somewhere else? They have that same technology.
The equivalent of Silicon fucking Valley?
Over 250 plants, employing thousands of scientists, technicians. This is the heartland of electronic production in the United States, which accounts for what, 80%? Of the world microchip market.
You destroy Silicon Valley and you have all those chips.
So Zorin has an equal Silicon Valley somewhere else. He doesn't right now.
No, he's been stockpiling. And he's going to form an international cartel, as he said.
We are now in the unique position to form an international cartel to control not only production, but distribution of these microchips.
So who's to say the British can't make it at the same speed he can?
Okay, Scott.
He's already got
right
him.
now, there's shortages all over the planet because of COVID and shit, right? If you have
businesses are going to buy from whoever's got
if you're
it.
stock right now there's a microchip shortage. If you have if you have stockpiled microchips and Silicon Valley gets destroyed tomorrow, you're made.
Yeah, in the current economy.
And this fictional economy. And this fictional economy. Like, suddenly this guy has...
How are you attributing a fictional economy to the 1980s?
Because I'm trying to illustrate that you're fucking wrong, because if you have a massive stockpile of microchips and then you destroy Silicon Valley, the value of your microchips
I get it. He has a
just like
stockpile,
Goldfinger.
for sure.
Yeah.
Can I vote that we move on to another topic?
That's what I was
we're going
thinking.
in circles.
Okay. Yeah, we are going in circles.
We're going in circles.
But let me just circle back though, real quick.
Let me just do one.
Just
Just
talking about Goldfinger.
Right.
So again, with Goldfinger, it has a prologue that doesn't weigh in on the plot, whereas this does. As you know, McCurdy already said, the gangster scene doesn't make any sense. With this, it's like, hey, let me show you out. And then Mayday pulls her little switch. And that's kind of like what we talked about with Stromberg, where Stromberg has this big table and you just think it's in some castle somewhere. And then it's like, oh, it's underwater. And then with this, it's just a boardroom. And then suddenly it's revealed like, oh, we're high up in the air. So not only is the way that Zorin kills that one guy fun and creative, but it also makes sense that he has to kill that guy to maintain the secrecy of his plot. And for all we know, he really only kills that guy and the leader of the miners, right? Who's also sitting at that boardroom table. Whereas with Goldfinger, he takes that one guy out and sends him on his way with the gold that he later has to pry apart from the car, whereas he could have just left that guy with all the other gangsters to die by gas. It's stupid. Oddjob kills the guy by shooting him, and then he goes and crushes the car, and then they have to bring the car back and separate the gold from it.
Forgive me, Mr. Bond, but I must arrange to separate my gold from the late Mr. Solo.
Get rid of one of those. Like, don't load it up with the gold. Like, why load it up with the gold when you're just going to have to separate it later? Or how once you shoot the guy, you don't need to crush the car anymore? But how amazing would it have been, though? And maybe it's because it was the 60s. But imagine if instead Oddjob just like pulled off and the guy's like, hey, you missed the exit, you stupid idiot. And then he just pulls into the car lot. He gets out and locks the doors. And then the guy's just stuck in there as the magnet comes down and picks him up. And he's like, no, hey, pounding on the windows and it's being crushed. And he's like,
that would be cooler.
Like, that would have been amazing. But instead, they did the stupidest thing.
I have a feeling that's what it was intended. But obviously,
I would hope
60s,
so.
That couldn't be done.
Bond also solves the problem with his dick. On one end, that's fun because it's Bond, but on the other hand,
it feels too at Deus Machina.
And I will say on that note, I never really gave Oddjob proper props for the fact that one of the lieutenants of Goldfinger is immediately willing to defuse the bomb because he doesn't want to die, and Oddjob kills that guy because Oddjob's just loyal to the end, whereas with Mayday, she gets betrayed.
And I thought that creep loved me!
So she ends up being the catalyst for how, you know, the whole situation gets reversed, which is awesome. Her redemption moment is great. But like Oddjob would have still been fighting Bond down in like the bomb pit or whatever. And again, in the same way that we got the satisfaction of seeing the detonator go off in Octopussy instead of just a counter stopping, we get to see the detonator go off in this one too. So much more satisfying of a ticking clock than just like tick, 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 done. Okay, we're done. As far as similarities go, to keep going, the stud farm is straight out of Goldfinger, but also very reminiscent of Drax's compound in Moonraker, right? The whole French
also filmed
connection.
in France, yeah.
So moving forward, right away, they're like, here's this microchip. We found it in Siberia. It was clearly stolen from this company that Max Zorin recently bought. Because of that coincidence, they immediately began investigating Max Zorin. They go to the English version of the Kentucky Derby or whatever.
Yeah, I thought we were in Kentucky.
No, that was, I believe, in France. I don't think, that was in Britain.
You narrow-minded
Thank you.
Wow. The Kentucky Derby? That's the only thing I understand.
You're narrow-minded.
Oh my God. Oh, the British have been racing horses far longer than we ever were. But I thought we were at the Kentucky Derby.
Initially, I thought that.
There's hats and top hats. And British people are there?
Well, I was like, why is Moneypenny there? Like, they flew her out too?
Yeah. And Q. They brought Q as well. They brought
They're
everybody
just enjoying
out
the
for
race
that.
and everyone else is working. I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like a corporate day off?
Exactly, yeah. So at that point, we meet Tibbett, and Tibbett's like, it's pretty shady that his horrible horse won this derby. And then we have our one zany assassin scene, but it's Mayday, so it's not exactly zany. It's just kind of, it's a little goofy.
Silly.
It is silly.
It's not the worst thing in this movie, but it's
the butterflies.
Yeah, papillon. But I gotta be honest, I love that car chase. I laugh my ass off.
It is good.
I really do. It's so funny
like it.
when he's driving the little
okay,
thing.
this is the point I want to make about this movie.
No back
that
to
really
the car.
that really puts it down several notches for me, and that is the plot of this movie is like we were talking about. It's very straightforward. It's actually not that bad. I actually thought it was way easier to understand than Octopussy.
Yes,
but what it lacks that Octopussy had, and that was the spectacle of Octopussy, I thought was a lot better than this film. For one, like the iceberg sub and the Beach Boys Needledrop, I was like, okay, that's just dumb.
Hell yeah.
The Paris
That's sick.
the
Why not?
iceberg sub,
And
I'm
why
like,
not?
okay, the iceberg sub, I can give a slight pass. The Beach Boys.
well, the iceberg sub makes total sense.
I'm saying,
No,
hold
it
on,
does.
I can give it a slight pass. I'm like,
Perfect.
okay, I get
You
it.
gave it a pass. That's fine.
I'm giving it a
That
little
is
bit of a
great.
pass. But then the Beach
That's
Boys
the perfect
thing was
camouflage.
like, are you serious?
The Beach Boys is
But, okay,
silly.
the Beach Boys
needle
is,
drop.
it is, but at the same time,
I thought we were done with that after
stunt-
Moonraker.
that stunt is so
It's the fucking
fun.
80s.
And here's what I'll say.
I'm not saying that the
They at
snowboarding
least
part about
started
it
early,
is
though.
bad. I'm not saying the snowboarding part of it is bad. The Beach
Well,
Boys thing, I think, is
it's
just
obviously
dumb.
ridiculous that
It's a
thing that
dumb
blew
needle
off
drop.
the snow track blew up, and then there's like it happens to have footholds on it, right? He can wear it. The premise is ridiculous, and it's clearly just there to have a cool stunt, and the stunt is cool to go
I'm not
snowboard down.
saying the
and
stunt.
shoot.
I am not saying what I'm saying. I'm not saying the stunt with the snowboard thing is bad.
Just the
I'm
music.
not saying
Yeah.
that. Just for the record, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is the Beach Boy needle drop in the beginning of the film is so stupid.
But
And
don't
if
you
that's how we
expect that
start
at
the
this
movie,
point? Don't you
I
expect
don't want
that
it
at this
anymore.
point?
I am
That
so
is
sick of it. I was sick of
purely
it in
to
Moonraker. I'm sick of it
disassociate
now.
all the old
It's
ski
to me, it's
scenes
the
that Bond
same
has
way.
had. Now
No.
he's got a
Scott, shut up.
snowboard. Now he's
Scott.
hip.
Okay. One
Just shut the fuck up.
one thing, just as far as it's
You.
put together, though, I will say that the song runs for a bit before the stunt, so it's like it's kind of funny, and it works a little bit better in that sense. Rather than imagine this, Bond's like it's like doo 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 doo, and Bond shoots down, and then as soon as he hits the water, it's like I wish that
It doesn't work as a climax.
had it only lasted as long as the slide whistle did, that would have been horrible, but at least it lasts for like a good 20, 30 seconds to facilitate just enjoying it, because suddenly James Bond is snowboarding and it's ridiculous. So it's like, it and I love the stunt well enough, and I love the Beach Boys well enough that I'm like, do you expect anything different at this point?
I do feel like what it is for me is like, you see, once John Glen starts directing these films, they get a little bit tonally different, like a little more serious.
Slowly but surely, they're getting more realistic.
They're getting
and
more
less
realistic.
goofy. Yeah.
And the fact that they throw this in there, I'm just like, oh, come on. Like, I thought we were done with this. And that's just how I instantly am just like, can we not, guys? Come on.
Yeah. And I get that, but it's like,
hold on.
But that's
So,
it.
hold on.
It's the one. Like that's
The
like
ski
the one
fight scene. How else do you update it?
It should
and
be
it's in
just
the opening
one.
too. It's in the
It should
opening
be
where
the
it's
one.
like it's not like the most tense thing ever. It's another
No.
ski scene.
But
it's
one
another
of-
ski
Another
scene.
ski
But
scene.
here's the
Update
thing:
it.
all the action scenes in this movie all have something overly ridiculous, and that is what I hate about this movie. I just like that to me
Okay.
is what puts the overtly silly or stupid set pieces in this movie. The Paris car chase scene, it's fine until the car breaks in half, and then it's just like, are you serious?
I love it. It's
this
so
is a
funny.
stupid
It's
comedic
great.
scene.
That is good.
And then,
It's cut
and
perfectly
then,
in
hold
half.
on, wait for it. And then we go to San Francisco. The fire truck chase feels like a different movie entirely.
Yeah.
Like,
But
we have two
what do you
cars
not like about
conjoined
it, though?
together. No, it feels like it's something that should have been Cannonball Run or Blues Brothers. You have cars conjoined together. You have a fire truck like being chased down. You have it flying over a bridge, and then all the cars like crash into each other. I'm just like, this looks like it should have been in Blues Brothers. You could have put the Benny Hill music under this, and it would work perfectly.
But okay, wait. Are you saying that in relation to the rest of A View to a Kill, or are you taking into account that like we still are on the heels of?
Like you have this villain,
Moonraker,
like Charlie, we were talking about this really interesting villain that while I'm like, I wish they'd done more with them, it still was, he at least had this interesting backstory. We have the scene where he's mowing down all of his henchmen and stuff. And then in the same movie, we have car chase scene with cars conjoined together that looked like it should have been a Blues Brothers movie with a fire truck and Bond hanging onto the ladder. And then the girl be like, I don't know how to drive. And like going over the bridge and then the cars, like it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous.
Dude,
it is.
Have you ever driven
ridiculous.
a fucking fire truck? You don't think you'd have a little panic moment being chased by the police and driving something that weighs several tons?
I don't like it either.
The scene itself is overly comedic.
The fire truck scene is
it's
like overly comedic. It doesn't matter if anybody was driving the fire truck. It's an overly comedic scene.
I will say that we're still with it. Like I totally agree with you that John Glenn took over with For Your Eyes Only, right? So we are like every movie. And this will continue into the Dalton era. They slowly shed their goofiness to where this movie has the least. I would say of the three John Glenn movies, I think this has the least goofy, stupid shit. Stupid, goofy shit. I'm combining the two.
What are the three Glenn movies?
The Glen
For Your Eyes Only, Octopussy. For Your Eyes Only still had the last effects of ridiculous assassins, like the hockey assassins, or even the chase scene with the drunk guy. Octopussy had most of India is stupid goofy. This one has the Beach Boys, which is in the prologue, and I kind of forget about it by the time the movie gets going.
You got the Beach Boys. You have the half car chase sequence, which is still ridiculous and silly, and the car
so
stuff looks cool at first, and then the car gets torn in half, and he's still driving it. I'm like, oh my god.
I'm fine with the car chase
Top Gear guys. Like, is that
honestly it's fine.
It's forward wheel drive, right? You technically could
Top
do that.
Gear actually tried that.
It's still very silly.
Top Gear actually tried a half car, a front driving 2-wheel car.
Yeah, it's been done in Top Gear. It's not that crazy.
It's silly.
Well, the whole fucking thing is ridiculous, but
that's my point though. The whole thing is ridiculous.
But it's fun.
It's fun in the same movie where a guy mows down a bunch of henchmen and laughs maniacally.
Yeah.
I'm separating. I'm focusing on the goddamn the future part.
And then we get the rock salt scene.
What's this loaded with?
Rock salt.
Oh, what about the rock salt?
And then we get the rock salt scene.
Rock salt's
which is also kind of stupid.
It's so enjoyable though, dude. I mean, because again, as we've been talking about, what it comes down to is, and this is me kind of giving it a pass by rationalization, but just hear me out. It's basically, we've seen this shit before, so they have to keep changing stuff up. Just having another car chase where nothing interesting happens, or another shootout where everything goes as expected, it gets boring. So they switch it up, and in this, they throw a little obstacle in his path with the rock salt.
Exactly.
Because we're in the 14th movie, and this hasn't been rebooted exactly. It's just trying to like McCurdy, you said last time, you're like, how many times have we had train scenes, but until Octopussy, we weren't on top of the train? It's like trying to just change stuff up so that it's not just the same thing over and over and over and over, because it's a 14th film.
That was the point. That was the point I was trying to make earlier with the snowboard, that they're trying to change it up. That's it.
Yeah, it's not just another ski scene where Bond gets away.
I don't mind the snowboard. Again, my point about the snowboard is not the snowboard itself.
You just hate
snowboard. Don't confuse my points. Do not confuse my points.
No, I get it.
I do not care that it's a snowboard. That's
I get
great.
it.
No, you don't, because you keep bringing it up. I'm not talking about the damn snowboard. I'm talking about the needle drop.
That's the first time I brought that up, McCurdy.
Two different things! It's not that they're using rock salt. It's just the fact that we know that the villains have guns, and then it's like, well, why aren't they shooting back? We know Bond actually has a real gun.
They weren't there to kill her.
Why did they have guns then?
To threaten her.
Yeah.
Why did they still have guns? Why did they still have guns? Why did they still have guns?
And they were met by James Bond, who beat the shit out of them and sent them along their way. They weren't there to kill anybody.
They were there to threaten her to accept the offer.
Just drop the lawsuit and shut my mouth. I haven't accepted yet.
So Zorin sent along his guerrillas to help you make up your mind.
The last thing they wanted to do was kill her, and they weren't expecting this random Secret Service guy to be there, right? So they fled when they got their asses kicked, and then that leads to worse stuff down the road because those guys run away. That scene leads to the City Hall scene directly. And the rock salt is just kind of a fun little turn, like that moment where the guy sits up and he's like, why am I not dead? And Bond's like, what the hell is this? And she's like, oh, it's a non-lethal shot. It's rock salt. And he's like, you're adorable, but you're stupid. Oh, by the way, I don't have it, but we've never done.
Where's your salt shooter?
I have. Oh, it's sitting over there. Actually, I have a salt gun. Anybody who nobody's ever paid us for this show, but if anybody wants to kill flies,
create an Amazon affiliate account.
Yeah, exactly.
Put a link in the video.
Bug Assault. It's called Bug Assault. Go buy one.
My
You'll love
father-in-law
it.
wants one of those.
Dude, I have 5.
I think he got one.
I have 5 of them. I'm not kidding. I have them in every room, and I let flies in the house, and then I shoot them with salt. If for anybody who doesn't know, it's a gun that shoots salt, and it's for killing pests.
It's like a Nerf gun.
House flies and stuff. It's amazing.
That shoots salt.
Click the link in the description and go buy one of these. It's my new favorite thing. Sometimes I need a kill shot.
Rock salt.
Anyway, so they go to the stud farm based on what the detective guy said. And then we have a little fun scene with him and Tibbett where they go into the room and they find the bug and they put the recorder under it, with a pre-recorded tape to make it sound like they're there when they're not there. Again, just like Live and Let Die, which is fun. But my favorite moment from that scene is when the guy listening is like, I wouldn't want to be his valet.
Well, don't stand there panting, Tibbett. Start the unpacking. Here, let me help.
Yes, sir. Oh, thank you, sir.
He's like, Tibbett, do this, and Tibbett, do that, and Tibbett, you suck, and you're stupid. And he's like, sorry, sir, sorry. And Bond just says,
I'm sorry, sir.
Don't be so damned obsequious.
Which all that means is like, quit kissing my ass as he's like berating him. Then he's like, sorry, sir. He's like, quit accepting my berating. It's just so perfect and hilarious. But anyway, and then right after that is where Stacey comes into play.
Which should certainly bear closer inspection.
We're on a mission.
Sir Godfrey, on a mission, I am expected to sacrifice myself.
Like we were saying last episode, where it's like, Bond's always focused on the mission, but if he can also get laid, that's a good mission.
Mr. St. John Smythe.
St. John Smythe, my dear.
Bond is operating under the name St. John Smythe. St. John Smythe. St. John. St. John. St. John. St. John.
Smythe.
Which,
it's awful.
Kinda
and then
weird,
it turns into James St. John Smythe.
The name is St. John Smythe. James St. John Smythe.
Yeah, and part of that is that Bond is always doing that. Bond is provided with a cover, and then he always ends up just saying that his name's James Bond anyway. And what that goes to show is what I was talking about again. What I was talking about last time is that I like when Bond is a provocateur. He goes somewhere, and even if he's supposed to have a cover, he still blows his cover because what he likes to do is to say things to somebody and see if they react.
What about fishing? Fly casting.
He wants to blow his cover in a way that, like, he doesn't totally blow it, but he rides that line to where he wants to get a reaction out of Zorin because that would confirm his suspicions. I will say, though, that polarized glasses are probably the worst fucking gadget ever. Ever.
There's a camera lens that you can use that basically just gets rid of glare off windows so you don't see it in the shot.
Polarized filter. All it is you twist it just like you would if you had polarized sunglasses and you do this. You put it on a lens and you turn it and it removes glare.
Except they're like the biggest tabs ever on the bottom of his lenses.
Yeah, exactly. It looks terrible. It's stupid. Besides us just knowing how they pulled off that shot, which is like whatever, that gadget is just not a gadget. Like polarized sunglasses are just normal sunglasses. Bond didn't need to do that stupid ass tab thing that looks ridiculous. They're basically just trying to take something that is like an ordinary everyday thing and make it look all gadgety, and it's just stupid. All he had to do was just have normal polarized glasses.
You'd think Stacey Sutton would be like, "Hey, there's like a weird guy looking at us."
Staring at us.
Could you close the curtain?
Window.
And again, it's all for the sake of just. I mean, he can see through the window already, but it just removes a little bit of glare. It's so lame.
So there's two things you were mentioning. So St. John Smythe, the reason why it's pronounced St. John is because it kind of goes back to Norman French origin. So they would used to say like St. Clair would be Sinclair. So the sin would be saint. So that's why there was St. John Smythe instead of St. John.
To make him seem a little more French, you mean?
French, yeah. So it's like Norman French style writing. The one thing I think is interesting in this movie is like, 2 movies ago, John Glen comes on the scene. He's like, I want to get rid of gadgets in an interesting way that makes a point about the character that he can do a bunch of stuff without gadgets. This film still has lots of gadgets, but
there's a lot of gadgets.
They're all subtle, and they're all like things that seem very practical for a spy to use.
There's a tracker in the opening when he finds 003. There's the bug finder shaver. There's the stupid-ass polarized glasses. The check scanner, which is a little ridiculous, but whatever.
It works.
And the window opener. I'm not sure if there are any more than that.
By Sharper Image. I don't know if you noticed that.
Sharper Image,
the thing was by Sharper Image. And then they had the ring that took pictures.
Right.
Yeah. They're all devices that would seem somewhat practical that can be hidden, like opening doors, seeing through things, taking photos. We don't have exploding pens, basically.
Yeah, they're not Deus Ex Machinas. He doesn't have his life saved by Q Branch here.
We do have a Star Wars droid driving around, though.
Yeah, it's a simple setup for a joke at the end of the movie.
Oh, James.
That reminded me of, was it Rocky 2 or Rocky 4, where he has the robot? It was weird because I'm seeing Dolph Lundgren. I'm like,
well, and because it's so rough too. Like it's just he's like, this is a highly advanced prototype, and it's like, it's obviously dated. I don't care about dated stuff because it's like, how are you going to avoid dating yourself? But especially when it's high-tech stuff like this. But what does save Bond's life every time? It's quick thinking, right? Like a simple tire, like just sucking the air out of a tire saves his life. He gets keel-hauled again, but in the sky, to where he just ties a quick knot, just like he does with the rock underwater and For Your Eyes Only. It's that balance, right? It's like you said, John Glenn comes in, he's like, I don't want to just have gadgets save his life. I want Bond to save his own life. And that's and so he brings back gadgets, but not so much that Bond's super reliant on them, but Bond is rather using his wits.
We don't get a Q scene in this movie where he's like, pay attention, 007. Like, we don't get that in this movie.
There's no Q scene.
There's no Q scene. Q's in the movie, but we don't get a scene where he's like, pay attention, 007, this is polarized glasses.
You put them on and you move the things and then you can see through windows. Yeah, but Q, I already could see through the window. Yeah, but now you can see better through the window.
If there's some kind of subtext to this movie, though, it does, like you were talking about, computers and microchips. And I think that was one thing that I wish we'd saw more of, as far as like, it seems strange that the movie is all hell-bent on just destroying Silicon Valley in the way it does, where I'm like, wouldn't I guess this movie's just not ahead of its time in the fact that it could have been more about computers. Much like a movie like War Games or something like that, because you do see like computers in this movie being used for good, as well as computers being used for nefarious reasons as well.
I find a computer indispensable.
So it kind of ties into the whole microchip thing. We have Q using a computer at one point in this movie,
and Stacey uses one briefly.
Stacey uses one to see seismic activity, and it's an apple. Which I thought was kind of cool.
Speaking of For Your Eyes Only, we talked about how avenging Luigi is great, but Luigi himself is a little lackluster. Tibbett is great. Like, Tibbett is what Luigi should have been, where we hang out with him a lot. We kind of go through some stuff with him. We kind of, we're a little sad when Tibbett goes, just because we spent time with him.
You do feel sad. Yeah. When he's going through the car wash.
It's like a very horror movie scene where he's just sitting there just happy-go-lucky, like I'm going through
he's
the car
literally
wash.
like, you can see it, he's kind of smiling. He's like,
I love car washes.
And then he just dies, But I will say, it is movies like these, like most people would be, they'd be like, oh, horror movies, this they taught me to like, I don't know, check dark rooms and all that. For me, watching these movies as a kid, a movie like this is why to this day I check the back seat when I get in my car. Because
you
Mayday
always did
kills
do that in high
two
school.
people. Oh,
Really?
dude, I always check the
Weirdo.
back seat. Nobody will ever sneak up on me, and it's mostly because of Mayday. Mayday kills two guys. Just always check the back seat. Just always. You never know. Anyway, last time I pointed out how there was like a little Ocarina of Time moment with the all-female fortress, right? Like the Gerudo. This time, coincidentally, we had a little winning Epona moment where he's like, if you win a horse race, you get to keep this horse, I mean, I'm like one track mind. I'm like, Ocarina of Time again. Again, it's mixing things up, right? Like, let's have a chase scene, but let's have it steeplechase. Let's kind of shift it up. And he tries to kill Bond by having the horse throw him. He puts all these obstacles in front of Bond, including hitting the little like button on his cane to make the horse throw him. But, it's like Bond's too much of a badass. Before, I'd always say keeping Bond alive, but where it's naturally evolved to is that it's not about keeping Bond alive. It's about naturally plugging Bond's survival into the plot in a believable way, rather than just having hire 50 million different assassins to try to kill Bond over and over and over again and fail all of them. Instead, with this one, it's like Bond runs into Mayday, but Mayday doesn't know it's Bond, and Mayday's actually running away from Bond, and Bond has to catch her, but he fails to catch her. Bond never identified her, so when he catches up with her later, he doesn't know it's her, and she doesn't know it's him either until she suddenly realizes that it is him.
He was the man at the Eiffel Tower.
They're onto him at that point, so Zorin looks up on the computer and confirms that he's actually 007, so then because he knows he's 007, he fucks with him because he's got an ego, so he's like, I'm going to have him killed by natural causes on this horse, and I'm going to kill Tibbett. And then at that point, when Bond survives all of that, he just tries to kill him by drowning, and he's confident that he is dead. So then Bond's able to go about his business because Zorin thinks he's dead. Then Zorin finds out that he's actually alive. Once he finds out he's alive, he tries to kill him again with the fire. Bond manages to survive that as well. And then at the end, it's all, about the showdown, about Bond running away, him trying to kill him with the flooding. I mean, it's all this natural push-pull, this up-down between Zorin has the advantage and then Bond has the advantage. Just like back with Goldfinger, that was the same thing where it was like Bond wins, then he loses. Goldfinger wins, then he loses. And that kind of keeps us engaged in, and it all blends into the story seamlessly to where you don't get frustrated at the fact that Zorin can't just fucking kill Bond, and he's also not just sending a bunch of assassins. That's where it's a better Bond story rather than these frustrating Roger Moore movies of the past. It's just like him running away all the time, running away, assassin, running away, assassin, running away, another assassin, and they're all goofy assassins, This movie is so much more grounded in that sense, where you don't think Max Zorin's an idiot, because most of the time Max Zorin thinks that he's done his job, because the guy is literally trying to accomplish one of the biggest tasks ever. It takes a lot of planning in order to orchestrate a double earthquake that's going to wipe out your competitors and all that. Yeah. It's a big deal. So when he kills Bond, Bond's just like a fly on his ass that he swats. And then all these other people are just flies on his ass that he swats. But Bond, just like Kamal Khan says, he's like, Bond's a rare breed. And Zorin doesn't really realize that until the end of the movie, right? And even at that point, he's still confident that he's going to kill Bond by way of the Golden Gate Bridge, and then he's going to double back and he's going to go blow up the mine anyway and complete his business.
This'll hurt him more than me.
I love Gogol at the end of the film, too.
The Order of Lenin.
for Comrade Bond. The first time ever awarded to a non-Soviet citizen.
I would have expected the KGB to celebrate if Silicon Valley had been destroyed.
On the contrary, Admiral. Where would Russian research be without it?
We need Silicon Valley too.
Well, I mean, and that's a real thing, right?
Yeah. Because the implication is that the Russians always would steal things from the United States all the time because they were like, why make it ourselves when we could just steal it from the Americans?
To this day, that's the same thing. You have communist countries that rely on the innovations of the West. Like you have capitalist countries that, because they have competition, they have innovation, and then you have countries that stick to communism, the idealism of communism, and they don't have innovation because they don't have competition, and so they feed off of our innovations essentially, which is really funny. Where ideally the Russians or the Chinese would completely take over the planet, and there'd be worldwide socialism, as referenced in Octopussy. They're like,
world socialism will be achieved peaceably. Our military role is strictly defensive.
But once they do that, they won't have the innovations afforded by capitalism. So what are they going to do? But so it is kind of like a funny, like we talked about. It's like they make the Russians look bad without demonizing them. They kind of make them goofy
they make
without
them like
demonizing them.
they humanize them in that they're like they need the West. Like it's like the characters in the show. Even like For Your Eyes Only, it's like there's this love-hate relationship, but we do see like this thread of a story with General Gogol that they started all the way back into The Spy Who Loved Me. Yeah. And then it keeps going on. And I like that they've created this B story with him that is kind of kept current with the Cold War stuff. So I thought that was kind of cool that they kept that story going for as long as they have.
You did not request approval before eliminating 007. Reprisals might jeopardize ongoing operations.
You jeopardize mine!
Basically, I think that scene's obviously set up with the fact that you have the general like going after Max and be like, dude, we're on the same team. And he's like, I'm not, like if they didn't put that, it just wouldn't work.
Yeah. And just to emphasize my point about Zorin is that he's like,
I no longer consider myself a KGB agent.
We trained you, financed you. What would you be without us?
No one ever leaves the KGB.
He just cares about power. Like he would kill everybody on the planet just to rule things, right? Like he's just purely a psycho. But anyway, who can tell me James Bond's cover name when he's a writer, a reporter?
James Stoke.
James Stock.
No,
Stock?
God damn it.
James Stock.
And why is it James Stock, Scott?
No idea.
Come on. Think.
Oh my God.
Hey, this quote
of the Financial
McCurdy,
Times.
McCurdy, motherfucker that knows everything about every movie.
No. Nobody
Stock.
answer. Scott, why is James Bond's name James Stock when he's writing for the London Financial Times? Can you answer this question?
Crypto.
Are you playing dumb?
Bitcoin.
The name's Bitcoin St. John Smythe.
I don't know. James Stock. I think he made reference earlier in the movie about
Oh my God.
Are you playing dumb?
No, I really don't know. Nathan, do you know
Stocks and bonds?
Bonds and bonds. Oh, wow.
Oh my God. All right. That's beautiful.
Hey,
We couldn't have written that.
Part of me was kind of like, I'm not really feeling this episode, guys, but that made it. That made the episode.
Stocks and bonds. I'm not fucking 40.
The rock salt, something fun about that scene, again, we keep talking about references to prior movies. He walks into the Sutton household thinking he's just going to catch her in the shower, much like Miss Anders, a.k.a. Miss Octopussy. And what's fun right there is that he walks into the bathroom and she's not there, and she's in the closet behind him, loaded up the rock salt, ready to shoot him. Now, McCurds, let's get it out. You hate women. No. You hate weak women. I don't know. You don't.
I hate
don't like
incompetence.
Stacey
Right.
Sutton.
Now
You
I
don't
sit
like
back.
Stacey Sutton.
Watch you two.
You sexist. You just hate women
Nathan,
in general.
take a break.
You don't.
Just sit
I'll be
back,
honest.
just
After
enjoy this.
rewatching this
go take a
movie,
dump.
I'll say this: I don't. She doesn't. I don't hate her as
Weak
much as I
women.
did as who's
Well,
it?
she's
Good-
got a
I'm getting them
backstory
mixed up.
and
Good night,
everything,
Good night,
right?
Good head. It was a good night, right?
Good night. Yeah. Good night.
Sorry, good night. Good head was Moonraker. I don't hate her as much as Good night, but I also don't think her performance is as bad. I do think that Tanya Roberts, it's really hard not to think of Tanya Roberts and not think of Midge from that 70s show, because her character is just very dumb and just a blonde.
I really never watched the show. I mean,
love
I've seen a
the
couple
show. Like, that
episodes. I
70s
know
show is one
you're
of my
like a big
favorite
fan of
shows.
it. So
Yeah.
like, I don't have that in my head. Okay, that's funny. No, hang on. That's funny though. You talking about though. What you talked about was like casting for a purpose, right? And it is a reality that certain casting directors and directors will be like,
Yeah.
let's bring this person in who in people's minds, like it's like putting Roger Moore in Cannonball Run. It's like because he was already James Bond.
Yeah.
Let's
You're saying
cast
like
with a
putting
purpose.
her because she was this Bond character in that. So
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
let me point. Okay, I'll say this. This is my little bit about Tanya Roberts. Rewatching this movie, I don't hate her as much as I thought I did. I don't think she's that bad. I think she does fall into the category of bad Bond girls, but she's not like the worst of the. She's not the bottom of the barrel for me now. I think it's just mainly what it is it has more to do with performance and whatever character or job you associate with that performance. So if you have a character like Miss Goodhead, who seems like a competent woman who knows how to do her job, she's at CIA, but she's also a scientist. Like she seems like she can perform. Her performance is like, oh yeah, I could see her being a scientist. She seems like a smart person. Scott's falling asleep. But then you get a character. And we'll see this in other
He's
movies
fantasizing
later on
about
we'll see
Tanya.
this but my point is you'll see this in other movies down the road, but you'll see characters what those characters are, their occupations are and what they're supposed to do, and then the way that they're performed don't necessarily match up. It's not every Bond girl, it's some Bond girls, and I think those are the ones that tend to be on the weaker sides. I should note that Tanya Roberts was nominated for a Razzie, and if you don't know what the Razzies are, they're like the anti-Oscars. The worst movies.
What?
She was nominated for a Razzie for this particular movie. I don't think she's terrible, but she has her moments, but it's like...
Okay. Here's the thing. My question to you is, because so far you have a track record of not liking any Bond girl who isn't perfect. She isn't completely competent. So let me just say this. When it comes to the Bond girls of this particular movie, you have Stacey Sutton, she's just a geologist, and she's put in these incredible circumstances where suddenly she's working beside, the bulldog of the British government, and suddenly expected to do crazy things like survive an elevator fire and then drive a fire truck. But she is smart. She's clearly smart, but she
And she has she has one really good scene.
She says a lot of times she'll say James, like she yells for James a lot.
James!
Oh, James.
But that's because she's like put in these extraordinary circumstances, and again,
She's in
it's
a
like
burning elevator.
It's out of fashion for a woman to scream for a man's help today. But this is James Bond we're talking about. James Bond is highly competent in dire circumstances.
I'm saying
but hang on. But then Stacey though is just forced into these things where she's like the definition of a sheltered child. She's like, yeah, my grandfather was rich. My daddy was rich. And then I was expected to take over the company. So I went to school. Like, she hasn't been through anything like this. She even wears high heels to the city hall as she normally does. Mm-hmm. And then that leads to her having high heels through the end of the movie, which is like the worst thing to be wearing. But that's just what she had on at the time because she didn't expect to run into Max Zorin. At the other end of that, though, is Mayday and Jenny Flex. Like, you have these chicks who, whether they're genetically modified or not, they are like highly capable and could just kill you with their pinky or whatever. So my argument every time you and I go into it about whether or not this Bond girl is good or that Bond girl is good, my whole thing is like, not all of them need to be like super crazy, ultra capable. I mean, your arguments with Goodnight were totally valid. My whole counter argument was she's just unlucky. She's like competent, but then super unlucky. Whereas with this, she's competent, but she's like, I'm way in over my head. I don't know. I just thought this guy was a writer for the newspaper.
And I'm not disagreeing with you because, again, like, this is rewatching the film because I've watched all these movies, you know, and like you and I have watched these movies dozens of times. It's just like rewatching it this time, keeping that in mind. I'm like, she really isn't as bad as I imagined when I first was watching the movie. She has her moments.
She even physically fights Zorin at the end, and she knocks out Scarpine.
Yeah. She's not but there's times when I'm like, not the best actress, but again, like, the character's written well enough that I'm like, I don't completely hate her when she's on screen. She's not my favorite part of the movie, but it's like just kind of like, it's fine. It works. I don't hate it. Versus Goodnight, where it's just like, I wanted to gouge my eyeballs out every time I saw her.
Just kill her.
You know, and then there's times when, you know, who was it in, you know, much as like Nans didn't like, who was it? Tiffany Case in Diamonds Are Forever. She's somewhat obnoxious, competent, but obnoxious. This movie, it's like, she's somewhere in the middle. It's like, she doesn't really bother me that much. After watching it a second time, I'm like, she gets one like clear scene that she's like has something to do with geology where you're like, okay, she understands her job.
If they go off, both faults move at once.
When we get later down the road, though, it just really comes down to performance and can they play that occupation off well enough that you believe it? And like, there are two, I think you and I agree, there are two performances down the road that you both are like, yeah.
I'm a nuclear physicist.
Yeah.
The single point of her strength in this movie is pulling a $5 million check out of her bag, ripping it up.
It's a good moment.
They have. I'd sell everything and live in a tent before I give up.
Forget the rest. Forget physical strength. It's psychological.
That's also when she falls in love with Bond.
And the way you handle those men.
Well, those baboons could come back.
I hope not.
Again, she's in high heels and she's kind of dainty, but at the same time, when it's between her grandfather's ashes and helping out Bond, she smashes it on the guy's head, and like that's a good moment for her. And then she's like very feminine, but then she always comes through.
My response is, yeah, okay.
I don't know why you hate women so much, McCurdy.
Okay.
Anyway, okay, guys.
Moving on.
Based on everything y'all have been saying, I think this is going to be a one-sided battle, and by one-sided, I mean it's like if I could put in that little screen from Mario Party, 1 versus 3.
1 versus 3.
Yeah, like.
I'm worried Char's gonna put it high because he's saying it's like Goldfinger but fixes stuff.
Well, okay.
And we have Goldfinger at the top still.
I will always say that Goldfinger has shortcomings, but I don't think it ruined. I mean, there's a reason why Goldfinger's at the top. It's still fucking Goldfinger. Even though everything that makes Goldfinger less than perfect, this fixes it. But that doesn't mean it's at the top of the list. But I think I am going to put it higher than you guys because I do, as I said, as John Glen goes along, he's slowly shedding the movies of the stupid shit, and he's making it a little classier. And I can, again, in the prologue, I can look the other way with the Beach Boys, and I can just enjoy it for what it is. And the car breaking in half, I can look the other way and enjoy it as it is. I don't think
stupid. But those are big things in the movie. They're part of the movie.
They stick
those
out.
Way into the movie.
Sure, they weigh in.
They weigh into the movie.
But that's why I'm not going to say it's number 1. But
yeah, but I'm not going to say it's number 2 or 3 or 4.
Okay, I like what you just said. No, I like what you just said. You said I'm not going to put it at 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. But that's why I'm putting it at number 5.
Yeah, it's not a 5.
Okay, why? Tell me why this movie is not as good as Dr. No.
5's, it's not as classy, and it has stupid, silly moments that really ruin the movie.
I think this movie is better than Dr. No. I really do. I think this. I think.
Let's ask the peanut gallery, Naz and.
But before we do, as we've talked about,
where you put it?
Every time we always say the same thing about Dr. No, which is like, well, with a small budget, they made a really classy story, and yeah, they did the same old tired argument. But we have transcended that at this point.
Yeah, and then I compare it to For Your Eyes Only and On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and I'm like, I don't really see it.
I think it beats the two of those. I think For Your Eyes Only is still weighed down by the same old
Where
goofy.
Are you putting it? You haven't said. Where are you putting it?
You haven't said yet, so why don't you say first?
No, you say first.
You cannot say it's worse than Octopussy, though.
Gallery.
There's no way it's worse than
the peanut
Octopussy.
gallery.
I don't think it's worse than
Make a goddamn statement, bitch.
Don't, Scott. Shut up.
Make a statement.
I don't think it's worse.
If you're going to call us the peanut gallery, make a statement.
I don't think it's worse than Octopussy. I think it's better than On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I'd put it at under For Your Eyes Only.
Okay, but why? How is it worse than For Your Eyes Only?
I think For Your Eyes Only has a much more interesting villain plot than this movie does.
You guys said in that episode, though, that what's his name? The Dove had that he was a lackluster bad guy. Whereas, again, we're comparing this guy to Goldfinger.
Guy, it's the plot with the two villains where you have, you didn't get no heroin. No heroin. Okay, so let me point out my general dislikes of this movie. I think the overly silly, stupid set pieces that are in this movie. I pointed out the sub I'll give a pass. Beach Boys Needledrop, the Paris half car chase scene, which is kind of like, why did it need to be half? Could have had that car chase scene without that, and I still think it would have worked really well.
So great.
The Firetruck chase in San Francisco feels like something out of a comedy, like Cannonball Run or Blues Brothers, with the police cars conjoining and then the silly Firetruck antics, and then it crosses the bridge, and all the police cars crash into it. You could put Benny Hill music under it. The Salt Rock scene is just kind of a silly scene just to have it in there. It talks about Tanya's character being in over her head, but like at the same time, it's like
they weren't there to kill her.
The guys had guns, and they know James Bond's there.
They weren't there to kill her.
Max Zorin already knows who James Bond is at this point, so it just seems very.
But he thought he was dead.
Silly thing.
He thought he was dead.
Tanya Roberts' performance is okay. It's not the best. And then again, I wish Zorin's motives worked better with the film. And then we haven't even really mentioned this, but Moore does okay. But again, it's like you look at him and you're like, you hang up the cape, dude. You hang up the cape. So that's kind of where I'm at with this movie.
You ageist son of a bitch. You were sexist and now you're ageist too.
So, Charlie, you're putting this above Dr. No.
Yeah.
At 5.
McCurdy, you're putting this below For Your Eyes Only between
7.
On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Let me respond here. Basically, for me, I get all the same old arguments with Dr. No. Oh, they had $1 million and they made something that was great. Yeah, I love Dr. No. But at a certain point, it gets surpassed, right? It gets surpassed just almost like, almost by default, just because this movie is ultra competent. Again, and this is coming on the heels of Octopussy, which is near impossible to follow. This movie's very easy to follow, and while it may be a Goldfinger ripoff, it's a ripoff in a fantastic way. I mean, nobody would really ever put together that information without really being told. Nobody would really pick up on that in the same way. But it all comes down to Max Zorin himself. He's a highly competent bad guy, again, who doesn't just hire 1 million assassins to kill Bond. He legitimately does kill Bond, or at least he thinks so. But as I said before, he's a psychopath who just does whatever he wants. He's even defying the KGB. He's power hungry. He's not. It transcends a desire for money, and it just becomes this desire to literally take over the whole world because he's a bastard. He's just like a psychopathic bastard who was just created in a test tube, essentially. His dad is like a Nazi doctor. And do you guys not feel for Mortner for like a second where he's like, Max, Max, and like Max is like ready to die, and he's like, no, my Nazi creation, like, you know, in the same way that I felt bad for the knife twins, you know, Mishka, you know, but beyond that though, it is a very competent film with very little to no offensive, stupid, or goofy shit. Yeah, the Beach Boys. Yeah, I mean, and that's all I'll give you. The car ripping in half is enjoyable. The Beach Boys is like, okay, we're back to our slide whistle stuff, but it's in the prologue and it's during like our millionth ski scene. Like I enjoy it. Like I like, bottom line is the slide whistle I don't enjoy. The Beach Boys I enjoy. It even has a little California Girls thing, and the movie takes place in California. Whatever. I'm not trying to give it a pass for that reason, but it's like it has
on the slide whistle. Shut
the slide whistle though, and double take pigeon say something though, which is like, why did you do that? Why just for
so
like
would you
an
not
audience reaction?
Put this above the man with the golden gun?
So with all that in mind, the overall bad guy plot is great and makes sense, and you can easily follow it. And the whole time it's Bond trying to figure out what he's trying to do.
Silicon Valley, and everything in it submerged forever.
If it happened at the peak of the spring tide for maximum effect.
That's today at 9:41, in less than an hour.
He's like, holy shit, we have an hour to stop this. Like, the whole movie is Bond investigating what is main strike, just like Grand Slam. What is main strike? He figures it out last minute as he's trying to stop it. And then you inject Mayday, who gets betrayed, and she has her great little redemption moment there.
Get Zorin for me!
The movie is so much more competent than pretty much every other Roger Moore movie, and has like a couple of things that triggers are like, it's goofy, you know, but those things are not poison pills that ruin it. At the end of the day, you still have this great bad guy whose motivation is just psychopathic world domination, and he's not a normal person. He has this really interesting backstory that legitimizes his being a psychopath. Octopussy dragged on past its climax, whereas this has its climax of Mayday blowing up the bomb, and then right away we have our Golden Gate showdown, and it doesn't take 20 minutes. It's just Max goes out and fights them, and it was set up that Max is a bit of a fighter, but Bond bests him quickly, and then he faces down Mortner, and then it ends. It's not like Live and Let Die, where the bad guy's death is a giant fart balloon. The offensive, goofy stuff is so early on that it's not a poison pill. So for me, it rises above Dr. No's perfect simplicity.
So you would put Scaramanga above Zorin?
I would.
Okay.
Do you want to put it higher?
I don't know. I heard a lot of very similar points in your argument there for both.
I have such a Scaramanga man with the golden gun boner, but I think if you two would kill,
that would be your one.
Only
point,
one
right?
is missing a third nipple. That's
Char's man of the golden
I see
gun.
Very similar
number one
qualities
for you
between
so
both.
From Russia with Love is at our list as it is now, in my personal list. From Russia with Love is like my golden child. I want to fuck that movie. I have.
All right.
Back when it was a VHS tape. When it became a DVD, it was a little bit harder, and then with streaming, you just can't. You just can't anymore with streaming. At least back in the day, you had the cardboard sleeve from the VHS, so you could just crumple it up and put your dick in that.
Stick a Chromecast up your butt, or like.
Anyway, I went on long enough. Where are you guys at? Give me numbers.
I'm trying to remember where. Okay.
I would. So I think. I'm
McCurdy,
probably
why do you
closer
look
to
depressed
Charlie
again?
than McCurdy. He always looks depressed.
You just go on and on for like an hour, and we've already heard all these points.
And now I've lost track entirely.
And I'm like, I heard this before. It doesn't really change my view on the movie.
McCurdy, you have this number 7.
This still has a lot of stupid stuff.
McCurdy,
like,
you have this number 7.
Dude, okay.
You're like,
two things.
It has two things.
Number 5.
It's got Beach Boys in the opening, and then it has a car that breaks in half. It's got really
Beach
enjoyable.
Boys. Car breaks in half. Fire truck through San Francisco.
Tell me though about the fire truck though.
Scene.
Why is the fire truck so
It doesn't
horrible?
belong in a Bond movie. Like, do you not understand that?
Why?
Do you not get that? Does it just like, do you watch it and you're just like, we went from cool ass car chases or to like guys chasing down when shooting with guns to like a fire truck being chased by police cars? That's the movie now.
Why
is
that
went
so?
To. Like this,
why is that so awful?
So much like, because it feels so much like Diamonds Are Forever. Like, we're gonna chase cars now, and then we're gonna do weird car flips that we screwed up.
But you and I both love Sergeant Pepper. So what's
Sergeant Pepper's an interesting, funny character.
And then you have this,
and
then you have this fat cop who's like, "You're under arrest." Like, it makes sense that they would try to arrest Bond,
is a car chase
and then they flub it. Like, why is it so bad
Sergeant
that Bond
Pepper wannabe and like antics with like driving this car and like, it's just stupid.
Totally.
Why?
I don't understand how you're not like, yeah, this is pretty dumb. I don't know why they put this in the movie. The only reason I could see them putting it in the movie is they're like, oh, well, we'll have the fire chick go to the mine, and then that ties the scenes together. I'm like, great. I don't care.
Okay, had there been a Ferrari there for Bond to steal, I would have been like, well, yeah, dude, take the Ferrari and not the fire truck. But he uses the fire truck to blow the cop away.
Very stupid.
And then they jump in the fire truck, and then at that point,
you don't have to convince me on the writing or how it fits in the
If you brought
plot.
up the stunt coordinators, though, and the stunt coordinators are like, hey, yeah, let's do a fire truck and let's have Bond hanging from a fire thing.
I've seen a better version of this in a comedy called Blues Brothers, where, it's hundreds and hundreds of cop cars chasing after one, like, unmarked cop car and then crashing into each other, and it's amazing and it's great. And it's in a comedy.
Specifically,
this
though,
is
like,
not a
what
comedy.
is, like,
it should be an action film.
It's
and
like
that's what drives me nuts.
It's like a 2-3 minute chase scene where Bond's in a fire truck.
It's the most, to me, it's like one of the most memorable scenes in the movie.
But let's go through it. Why is it stupid though? You haven't really said. You're like, well, it's because like some cops get tied together. It's like, okay, they get tied together, and then they run into a sign and they split apart.
It's
like the cops are made to look.
It's like, oh, we can do this funny thing with the cop cars. Let's put the two cop cars together. Well, that's funny.
Yeah, they crash into each other, and then that leads to them
silly.
Crashing and all that.
It's silly. It's something you would see in a Looney Tunes cartoon.
What do you mean? Like they crash into each other, and then they get linked, and then they're like, "F our cars are."
It's something you would see in a Looney Tunes cartoon.
This goes back to my belief that like us just ranking these movies based on like serious to goofy is boring. Having a scene where Bond runs from the cops. We've seen that before, like in
Diamonds Are
Forever.
We've seen it Diamonds Are Forever, and we've seen it in Live and Let Die. I know that. But so, in this particular movie, it's now a comedy chase scene.
And what's wrong with that? What's so offensive about Bond running from the cops? And
because I thought we were past all that. By this point, I'm like, yeah, I thought we got some serious action films, but we don't.
What would be more serious? Like okay. If you got rid of the goofy stuff from the cop chase, what would you get rid of? The two cars getting linked?
I'd get rid of that. I'd get rid of
Why is that so
whole
goofy?
Car, like the car coming down and then sliding into all the other cop cars.
Why is that goofy? Why are those two things goofy? The goofy stuff is the cop who's like, like that's the goofy performance. But overall, the action isn't goofy.
Hold on, we didn't even mention all like the funny tidbit moments with that scene, like
the fat cop.
The ladder comes over to the two cowboys in the car, and then their hats come off, and they're like, "What?" And then you also have the scene with the
but why
trailer,
is that offensive?
The people in the trailer in the back seat. It's not offensive. It's just.
I mean, offensive
silly.
So long as you're so far funny. As like your goofiness
what
radar goes. Like, why are those
every
bad?
Scene is meant for laughs. It's not a movie. It's just like, okay, now this is what the movie is. And
that's what I mean. Because it's not like crazy serious. Why is that such a bad thing?
Because the movie has a serious like villain. Like it undermines that whole great thing you were talking about. How Zorin's this really cool villain, and then you have this silly chase scene in the movie. It undermines that. Like I don't understand how you not see that.
I mean,
how do you not
I
see
get
that,
it.
That silliness undermines it.
Like when it's Moonraker and it's totally absurd, that's one thing. But the tone of this, it's a scene with a bunch of cops that want to arrest him wrongfully. It's not like he can shoot them, so they entertain you with all these stunts and stuff, and him like busting up the whole city. I just don't see it as goofy as you see it. It happens well before Zorin has his whole dive into the deep end. So it just doesn't it just doesn't hit me as the goofiest thing in this series.
It's tonally different from the rest of the movie. It's like, why are we putting this in the movie now? And it's, come on.
Like, yes
Come on.
and
It
no.
is totally a
Yes
silly
and
scene.
no.
It is a silly premise.
I get what you're saying, but it
It's
doesn't go
literally written
so
as a silly
far.
premise. What if Bond had to take a fire truck? What great scenes could we do with that? And then every single scene with that is just humorous. It's just silly.
I'm somewhere
It's Looney
between you
Tunes.
two, but definitely closer to McCurdy. I don't like that. It's definitely a silly scene. I dislike every movie that has a cops being dumb scene. I mostly agree with McCurdy. It hasn't changed in the last hour or whatever. I agree with a lot of McCurdy's points, and just to a slightly lesser degree, do I find some of the stuff he finds offensive, and that's, I think, probably all it comes down to for why I'm a bit higher than him.
Please, for the love of God, give me a hook. I need something to convince me that Doctor knows better other than nostalgia. It just sounds like nostalgia.
It's not nostalgia,
Oh, it's
man.
great.
Like,
It's like Sean Connery.
And I also point out, let
he
me
says
point this
Bond,
out.
James
It's like
Bond.
this movie, like Dr. No is, and I've said this before, the first 6 Bond movies are Bond's movies. Like those are the pure Bond films. Every movie after that is either a retread or trying to do something.
Yeah, this movie's
that's
Goldfinger, but it's
popular.
not. This movie's not
This
like
movie's a
trying to
retread.
be something it's not. It's like a remake of Goldfinger, but it's a pretty great remake of Goldfinger.
Hold on.
Yeah?
I want Scott to say why he thinks this movie is better than Dr. No. Because from my point of view, and this is why I'm having trouble with what this, is that I feel like, Charlie, you've made a lot of great points. You're weighing in a lot of the arguments. Nans is listening to my arguments and being like, you make some good points. But Scott, I feel like, just wants to go home and be upset. And I can't tell if that's what he wants or he actually agrees that Charlie's right. So my point is, what does Scott actually think of this movie, and why do you think it's a better movie?
Dr. No's old. Again,
But
we
I don't
were
care what you
there
think about
earlier.
Dr. No.
It's
Do you
old.
really think? Do you
It's
really
an
think
old
in your
rhetoric.
heart of hearts?
Old bad guy. No, yeah, in my heart
Make
and
good
hearts.
arguments.
Of
Make
my
good arguments.
heart
Don't
and
say.
hearts.
Do you really go away and you're like, man, A View to a Kill is such a better movie than a film that like helped establish a classic character
because
and did
it's
a really great
old
job
and
of
it's
it?
simple and it's boring.
Like Goldfinger's old
It's
too
too
but
good.
it's
It's
better.
too good.
It's-
Sorry.
Goldfinger's
It's
at the
great.
top.
It's fucking brilliant. McCurdy, you want to know my opinion? It's fucking brilliant.
Okay,
But
what
it's
specifically?
old and it's
But
boring.
specifically, Scott,
it's
what is
old
your
and
argument
it's
to that?
boring, McCurdy. Shut up.
Why do you
It's
like A View
old
to a
and
Kill
it's
more
boring.
than Dr. No?
It's
What
old
about
and
A
it's
View to a
boring.
Charlie, is it working?
It's
Scott,
boring.
Charlie, listen. I
is
think
it bringing
here,
you
this is
down,
what I'm going to
Charlie?
tell you. Charlie, this is
don't
what I'm going to
have
tell you.
Oh,
to.
no,
For the sake of time
no.
and
no.
bad argument.
You want to hear my
I think we should
opinion,
win. I
McCurdy?
think it
Shut
should-
the fuck up.
You're
Shut
doing
your
the
mouth.
same thing you did
Shut
back
your
in Goldfinger.
fucking mouth.
You're doing the same
Shut
thing you
your
did back in
mouth.
Goldfinger.
Shut your mouth.
Make good arguments.
Shut
then.
your mouth.
Make good arguments.
Shut your mouth there. Shut your fucking mouth there.
You're turning Italian
no,
because
you asked for my opinion.
England
Shut your mouth.
lost.
Let's
Shut
hear
your
it.
mouth. Shut your mouth.
Because when
No,
I
it's
asked
old
you,
and it's
I didn't
boring.
bring up
McCurdy,
booze.
I'm
I
sorry.
didn't bring up
It's-
booze at all.
It's
Hi. Hey, things got so heated there, we all had to go change our shirts. And Nathan died. So
took his own life
Um,
tragically.
the vote was a little off balance, so Scott went and murdered Nathan. So we decided that A View to a Kill is better than Dr. No by way of vote. So McCurdy's been edged out.
Goodbye.
Kidding.
Okay.
Okay.
okay,
Here's what we're gonna do. We took a couple days off to go rewatch these movies so that we could have a better idea of because after probably 3 hours of yelling at each other, we didn't come to a conclusion. So right now we're coming to a conclusion. I'm just gonna start with a little opening statement, and then I actually reached out to you people, you fine folks on Reddit and YouTube. I'm just gonna read through some of your comments, and then we're gonna settle this. So without further ado, my opening statement. So far, really, the only argument that anybody's made in favor of Dr. No is that it's just so simple and simple and simple. It's simple. It's so simple. And I get that. And that argument made sense back when it was Thunderball versus Dr. No, but that was because Thunderball was obviously leagues beyond Dr. No so far as plot and action was concerned, being the fourth film, having more money, whatever, it doesn't matter. But at the same time, it had these weird plot conveniences and overly emphasized the spectacle over the story, and that's why we ended up putting Thunderball below Dr. No, and Largo weighed in on that too. Again, bad guy argument. It was bigger, but not better. But when it comes to A View to a Kill, it doesn't have those plot conveniences. It actually has a really solid plot with a great bad guy, great henchman, a great bad guy plot, and I'd say a better Bond girl overall, even if that Bond girl is Jenny Flex or Mayday, because you hate Tanya Roberts or whatever. The question is whether or not a couple of Roger Moore era goofs are enough to ruin the entirety of A View to a Kill versus the simple perfection and low-key classiness of Dr. No, which, again, was pretty much everybody's argument. And I get it. Dr. No's fantastic. For me, it mostly comes down to Zorin versus Dr. No. You have Zorin himself, who they began investigating from the get-go because of his connection to the Siberian microchip pulled off of 003. And he's winning these horse races with inferior breeds, raising questions as to how he's pulling that off, which leads Bond to investigate his stud farm, where he finds Mortner's lab and the microchip horde, and discovers who Mortner is, that he's an ex-Nazi geneticist that experimented on concentration campers. Yes, I just said concentration campers. Why
do people watch this show? Why do they watch this show?
Good morning, concentration campers.
Okay, sorry, hang on.
What activities do we have today?
That's the worst thing I've heard all day.
Sorry, we're talking about actual Nazis. Okay, we're not. We're not Nazis.
We're Nazis. We're Nazis.
So our horse plot directly plugs into the backstory of Zorin himself when we come to realize that he's in fact a genetic experiment gone wrong by Herr Mortner. And that he's also a KGB agent run by our favorite Gogol, because Operation Paperclip, we all know these things, that the Nazis were split up between the Americans and the Russians, whatever Nazi scientists they could get their hands on, they would, and so he ended up with the KGB, with the Russians, and then Mortner moves him and Zorin out of Berlin and over to, he basically is planted into the UK. It's a really interesting backstory versus Dr. No, who's just like a guy. And we come to know who and what he is specifically by way of investigating this whole microchip thing, thereby organically incorporating his backstory into the overall plot. Then throw in Mayday and the other henchmen who may or may not be genetic experiments gone wrong themselves. Then throw in Stacey and the fun action sequences, which get goofy, but never stupid like the gondola. And I still enjoy them and don't feel anger at watching them like the gondola. And so overall, you have a really big and enjoyable film that easily trumps the simplicity and Connery classiness of Dr. No, which is literally all anybody can say about Dr. No, is like, yeah, but when Bond says Bond, James Bond, and it's great, and it's like, yeah, I get that. But like story-wise, they're night and day. Again, I wanted to put For Your Eyes Only above Dr. No, but we all agreed that it had a bit of a convoluted plot and still suffered from early Roger Moore era wacky assassins and chase scenes that undermined the plot, that put it below Dr. No. But with this, it doesn't have those things. It just has some goofy moments. Again, Roger Moore era goofy moments, but not enough in my book to sink below Dr. No, which is rudimentary and prototypical at this point. That doesn't mean it's bad. It simply goes back to my overall argument that A View to a Kill isn't only bigger, it's also better and more enjoyable. But overall, this is an argument of style versus story, and story will always be the end-all, be-all for me. And to bring it over to McCurdy, I just have one question. If the Beach Boys Needledrop, the half-car chase, and the fire ladder scene were excised, would you still hold Dr. No above A View to a Kill?
It's a good question. It would make my argument harder to make, but I'd also say that for some other points after I watched the movie Dr. No a second time, I was like, no, there's other things that I'd missed the first time. Like it's been a while since I watched it, so rewatching the movie, I was like refreshed on some things that I was like, oh, I forgot about these things in Dr. No that I actually really like. So I don't know if that would sway my argument enough, but
Which
Those
I get.
things,
I get.
again, like
Dr.
I
No's
said
awesome.
before, and I've reiterated this point multiple times, is that tone does matter with these movies. And if you're going to try to make a serious Bond film with like, you know, you bring in the Nazis, concentration camps, like those types of things should warrant it to be like, oh, this should be a serious Bond movie. But
it's not like we go to the concentration camps. It's not like
I'm
we're
not
in
saying
there.
it does, but you're like,
know.
it's just like, again, all these movies.
You wanted this movie to be more Schindler's List?
No, I never said that.
Nathan couldn't join us, but he prepared a statement that McCurdy is going to read.
Okay. So me as Nans, this is what Nans had to say. I didn't get a chance to rewatch A View to a Kill, but I did watch Dr. No. It just reinforces my feelings. So what I said previously still stands. I thought A View to a Kill was okay, but not better than Dr. No. I did enjoy the car chase, but not the Firetruck chase scene, which we had talked about at length. Yep. While the plot bad guy scheme is good, it's recycling if Goldfinger not necessarily bad to do, but not great either. Max Zorin as a character is cool, and I like Christopher Walken's portrayal, but I wish we got more of this backstory involvement with the KGB. Like I said before, this is me interjecting. I do feel kind of the same way.
There's a lot of tell, don't show.
And there's a lot of tell, don't show in Dr. No, but I'll get to that. But yeah. I think the issue I have is more, if you're going to introduce Russia and the KGB into your story, it better have a purpose other than to give backstory. And I just feel like it's missing a little something there.
And we literally have a scene of the Russians trying to take him out, but like it kind of ends in like a purposeless hot tub scene followed by our goofy like who moment. You know, I get that.
The argument could be made that the Russia stuff intertwines at the very end when Gogol says, "Oh, my interests are also I didn't want, you know, Silicon Valley to be destroyed because we rely on American ingenuity." And like you could make that argument, but like it just doesn't feel strong enough in my vote. Anyway, back to
imagine
Nathan's
going.
statement.
Sorry, real quick. Imagine going like behind the scenes back in Moscow, and there's some scene where they're talking about how Max Zorin is a problem and we got to get rid of him, and like even
think
something
of all the
like
previous
that
films
been
where
fun.
we've had Russia more involved with what's going on, where we back and forth between Russia's dealing with and the Americans are dealing with it, you know, like, but that's just not there. Okay, so back to Nathan's statement. I think Max Zorin is a good bad guy, better bad guy than Dr. No. I think Max's plot is more interesting, but I think maybe some points need to be deducted. I think he's saying points need to be deducted for it being unoriginal? ? We discussed some silly things in A View to a Kill, bringing it down. And Charlie argued Three Blind Mice was silly. I disagree. I think it's kind of sets the tone for being in Jamaica and also sets the audience up to have their expectations subverted. At the end of the day, I think the hook is James Bond. Beyond people having preferences for one or the other, I think Connery kills it in Dr. No, and Moore doesn't do as great in A View to a Kill. Connery's Bond is just cool and control and effective. Now here's my statement, because I did prepare. It's much longer, but it's
real
more
quick though. Just before you jump into yours, it's not that I don't like the Three Blind Mice. It's more like my whole point is, and I do the same with Goldfinger all the time. My point is that arguments about Bond always come down to goofy versus serious, and my overall argument with that is that the world of James Bond is ridiculous, and every movie has something that's goofy about it, including Goldfinger. From Russia with Love, no. That's why it's it's like the crown jewel for me. But goofy doesn't offend me horribly unless it's stupid like the gondola, where it's purposeless and it's just there to be like, look what we did, but it's with no purpose and it's lame.
And I think the argument can be made though, and I think Nans and I both agree that there is a lot of what you were describing, but it doesn't offend you. And that's where I'm like, it offends a lot of other people and offends me. And I don't even like using the word offend. It's
the
just
half car. Like if you enjoy it, like, because if you enjoy the gondola moment, I don't know, you might be like high or something. But but the half car is like it's enjoyable. I can't I call it a guilty pleasure, you know. Sure. But I just don't want to discount. My whole philosophy is not discounting entire movies because they make one wrong turn, and we'll get to that with Daniel Craig. Because like eventually there are moments that feel out of place because it's so stark. It's so dark, stark, and depressing that any kind of goofiness is like, you know. But I'm okay with like certain things being a little ridiculous. So far as they kind of help the plot, and there's nothing in A View to a Kill that kills the plot for me. In the same way that, as I pointed out in depth in For Your Eyes Only, the snow chase scenes, they undermine the plot. Again, it's like trying to be a smarter spy film, and instead it's like, well, we have to have these chase scenes, and they undermine the smart plot they're trying to play with. Whereas in this movie, the car chase with the cops, even if it gets a little goofy and you have your cop that's like, oh, man, you know, it doesn't undermine the plot at all for me. So that's my piece. Go ahead.
Okay, so
Scott, shut the fuck up.
He's like, okay. Okay. Okay,
Get
so
on with it.
Here's my case for Dr. No. And some of these I think you kind of touched on or alluded to, and I could easily see where you're going to be like, oh, I don't agree with that, but here's my piece. After watching Dr. No yesterday and today, and just really kind of marinating and thinking about it.
Yeah.
So when comparing these two films, the answer should be obvious. I've said my piece on why I don't think A View to a Kill is a great Bond film, but let me focus on the positives of its competitor in this argument. Why is Dr. No a better Bond film? As Scott would put it, better music, better girl, better villain, and yes, a better Bond. From the moment the movie opens, we hear our first rendition of the classic Bond theme that plays throughout the series of its original guitar riff. That is when it hits you. You're watching a James Bond movie. I unfortunately don't get that feeling when I watch A View to a Kill. While Duran Duran's song is a great song to sing while you're driving to the grocery store to pick up laundry detergent, it doesn't put you in the mood of a spy thriller with swagger and grit. And yes, you might be saying, yes, the Bond theme is in this movie, but I think more often than not, it's the Duran Duran theme, either in orchestral form or its actual theme, than the Bond film.
That's common.
It is, but this movie, it's like, I instantly watched Dr. No, and I'm like, oh, I'm watching a James Bond movie. When I watch the last movie, I don't get that feeling. And let me keep going. Ursula Andress' performance of Honey Rider may be dubbed and allocated to the second half of the movie, but her character, her performance, of course, her looks leave an image that you can't forget. When she gives her character's monologue on her life with her father and how she was raped as a victim in the only subtle way films in the 60s could, damn it, I believe it. And when she tells Bond she killed a rapist using spider venom, and only in a matter-of-fact manner tells him that it took him days to die, I believe it. And when she asks Bond if he has a girl of his own, right away we know what she's thinking, but more on this later. For some, she may only be eye candy and add an obstacle bonus for Bond in the end. What would a Bond film be without its gorgeous Bond girl? I can't really say the same for the late Tanya Roberts. Yeah, she passed away. I don't think we mentioned that. Yeah, she passed not very long ago. And while a character may be something to behold, and I'm talking specifically your character, and you made a lot of points about this, her performance is more than on the side of obnoxious most of the time. Next, we have the titular character of the film Dr. No, played by Joseph Wiseman. We've gone on lengths of Christopher Walken's performance and character of Max Zorin, but I beg to differ much with Dr. No. He's held in elusive mystery throughout the film. He's the Harry Lime to the third man. While we see Max Zorin do some pretty horrific things,
Dead.
No one was really that scared of him. Not like Dr. No. Every henchman of No's can't bear to live if they are caught failing. That only leaves to the imagination of how terrible Dr. No really is. Dr. No sees his men as expendable just as Max Zorin, but Wiseman's voice and presence lurks in your mind. Walken is Walken. His voice has become a party trick to entertain friends.
Hi! It's me, Christopher Walken. You know, I'm Fatboy Slim. I like to dance. I like to move. Unless there's an uncomfortable hunk of metal up my ass.
But Wiseman's voice is spooky and dangerous. I think anyone can play manic and laugh at their demise, but I think it takes some craft to conjure that what Wiseman's performance does. We may not care that much about his evil plot, and I beg the same for Zorin, but at the end of the day, Dr. No is what we expect out of a James Bond film, and Zorin feels like a corporate yuppie 80s villain. And then that leads to the fight between the Titans, Sean Connery in his first role of the character and Roger Moore on his last leg. If there's a hook, I think it is here. Connery is everything you want in a James Bond and everything you wish you aren't. He's cunning, witty, dangerous, gritty, and sexy. Every woman in this film has their eye on him and wants a piece, and we believe it. More is really hard to buy. While he gets in bed with a lot of women and he has his charm, it's hard to believe Moore pushing 60 could do all of this. He's better off buying an ice cream.
Yes, well, you get your clothes on. I'll buy you an ice cream.
The moment the film introduces Connery, as Bond, smoking a cigarette, playing Baccarat, and saying his infamous line, "My name is Bond, James Bond," and the theme swells, "We want to be this guy." He's fucking cool. His back and forth wordplay with Dr. No, his smooth approach to getting into bed with Sylvia Tench, as well as other women, his unforgettable one-liners, such as, "I think they were on their way to a funeral, don't let him get away," and "You've had your six." It begs the word, it's iconic. But at the same time, and I'm going to drink to that.
No, I'll drink for you. I will drink for you.
Which, I didn't write this in there, but Roger Moore doesn't even have this in there's nothing like that in the Roger Moore films. The pieces are kind of there for A View to a Kill, and I don't discredit you for the villain or the plot, but I don't think that's the whole package necessarily, especially when we're talking about like what is the essence of a Bond film? What is that guy with ice in his veins that you notoriously talk about? Like, I just don't see it in this movie, and I think it's in Dr. No.
That's a good point. That it's not like he doesn't in Fear Eyes Only when he Sparta the guy off the cliff. That's a good Bond moment. And then again where you're like, Roger Moore didn't want to do it, and I'm like, Roger, but yeah. I rewatching Dr. No, and again the weird thing, and I'm about to read the comments from everybody online, and like the number one thing, the moment you express an opinion on a Bond movie in a critical manner, everybody's like, you hate it. And it's like, no, I can criticize it and still love it.
We're talking about two things we like we're arguing that.
And which one's better? And everybody's, no, you just hate it. Or even like, You Only Live Twice being at the bottom. And everybody's, you hate it. Like, no, it's just not as good as the others. But it's still on the list. In the same way that like, everybody ranking the Beatles is like, Ringo Starr's at the bottom. And I'm like, yeah, but he's still a Beatle, bitch. Yeah. He's awesome. Like, Ringo is awesome. Try being as cool as Ringo Starr in your entire life. Your entire sad, pathetic fucking life. Anyway, so rewatching Dr. No, I'm like, I get it. It's so cool. Sean Connery is the man. Like I said, if he wanted to do butt stuff, I'd be like, yeah, sure.
One point we've made on bad guys in the past, and actually have made with Dr. No, I think in comparison to Goldfinger when we were ranking those two. I once again, we've made the point we like an involved bad guy, right?
An active
Zorin
bad guy,
is at least involved. I'm not saying Dr. No is not involved, and I do love that overhanging,
Blofeld-esque
darkness that you alluded to, McCurdy, that he has, that everybody's terrified of him, and we don't see him for 4/5 of the film.
People are willing to kill themselves rather than
face what he's doing, and he's always alluded to and talked about but never seen, which I think is.
And I still like that, but I still,
from a movie standpoint, I think that does something to the film overall. It's not something that's like, of course. And I was a very big proponent about like active bad guy.
East, west, just points of the compass, each as stupid as the other. I'm a member of Spectre.
Charlie, you had said that like, well, Dr. No is just a guy. And I was like, no, he's not. Because Dr. No talks about like, this is in the thick of, again, it's the thick of the Cold War as it's just beginning. And he's German and he's Chinese. And he knows that he's not going to be welcome to either or. So he's just... Yeah. His character in itself is somebody who's torn apart by two different cultures, the East and the West.
Well, he says, he's like, nobody would bring me to either one, so I joined Spectre.
So he joined Spectre. But then he's like, so his character, and that's what I think is also missing with Zorin, is like kind of the same thing, right? Like Zorin, KGB agent, but he's living in the West, and he's benefiting from all of the capitalism and free enterprise of our country. So you would hope that his character is like this middleman, like he's going to do something that's going to hurt both. But it's like, it really feels more like it's hurting the United States more than anything else, even though that like it's a line that's tacked on to the end where Gogol's like, oh, my interests are also your interest in that regard. And so it's like, okay, but East, you know, like he has that line is like East and West, it just points on the compass equally as stupid. And it's such a perfect line. And I'm just like, that's the character. Like that's the guy. And like he says it with such like gravitas that I'm just like, this guy's a force to be reckoned with. And like, that's to me where Zorin is manic and very, you know, he's zany and over the top at times, not all the time, but at times. Wiseman's performance is just even keel, so it kind of makes him scarier in my opinion.
I would disagree in the point that bringing down Silicon Valley would just kind of only harm the U.S. or its allies. I would imagine that at the time, Silicon Valley probably provided a large majority of the world's chips, not just European or American.
I think what the film's missing is if you're going to include Russia in the plot, it would have been better if his motivations at least had stemmed from like something along the lines of like the KGB didn't, you know, accept me because I was a superhuman. And you know, I don't even like the West either, so I'm going to utilize my power that I've gained in the West to topple both Russia and the United States. And that's never really instated, and it's not necessarily like it's never stated and it's never alluded to in any regards. And so that's where I'm like, where Nans and I agree. It's like I feel like that is underutilized. Like you could have done something more with that as your motivation. There's just something missing there. Not to say that like his plot and the way his actions work, because a lot of it's again borrowed from Goldfinger. And I'm not gonna say that Christopher Walken's performance isn't something to be like, boo, but it's just like that's the thing that's kind of missing for me.
Boo.
Boo.
That's how he would say it. Boo.
Boo.
I see your side there, McCurdy. I would say in the beginning, I think they tried to find something like that. I will agree. I don't think that they ever came to, you know, like a Dr. No, f them, both sides type conflict, like you said. I think they tried to allude to it in the beginning when they said that they found the Russian chip and they were getting close to the same technology.
Yeah.
So is it the Russians trying to take this down so they can hold this technology, launch a nuke, take us out, and they still have, you know, full operation of their systems? But I do agree that was probably lost throughout the plot of the film.
Yeah, that was like touched on and then forgotten about.
Yeah, if they
became
had
more about
stayed more
Zorin.
on that point, then I think.
And that's
maybe
also
it would
why
have
I
made more
feel like
sense.
he feels more like a corporate yuppie villain rather than like. And I think it's funny because you can make an analogy, and now I'm going to say something somewhat political, but bear in mind I'm talking about the 1980s. He very much like feels like a Donald Trump of the 80s, that corporate America type of person. And it's really funny to me because like not that much longer in his career, he would play kind of a similar character in Max Struck in Batman Returns, where he also tries to play like this Donald Trump type character. And I think he's just very good at doing that because they're both from New York. They both kind of have similar accents. So like, it's not to say that like, I'm not trying to say something about Donald Trump's politics of current times, but I am like, saying that
you're
like,
saying he's a businessman and like he's out to enrich himself.
Yeah,
it's like,
he was like the businessman of the time. And like that, he was very much in part of the iconography of the 1980s and the yuppie culture. And so it's like, it's not too far-fetched to think that the writers were like, let's make this character like a Donald Trump type, much as like they would be like today, and they kind of did this where they did Batman v Superman. They were like, let's make Lex Luthor a Zuckerberg type. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of that kind of thing to me.
When it comes down to it, still, and I've done a lot of review of both films again since we've been away, I would still watch A View to a Kill over Dr. No. So I would still place it above it, but it really is so goddamn close.
On that note, I think I would rather watch A View to a Kill than Goldfinger, but I can recognize that Goldfinger is a better film. And that's what I mean. It's like, that's why this is such a difficult task, because some things are enjoyable and then other things you just know, like, okay, objectively, Goldfinger does a better job of this, that, and the other. And again, I love Goldfinger. I have to say it because somebody's going to, you just hate Goldfinger. It's like, no, but you know what I mean? Like, it's called a guilty pleasure. And that's why for Scott and I, certain scenes don't ruin things. Cause it's like, whatever. James Bond pulls a cool stunt on a snowboard and they bring in the Beach Boys. It's goofy, but it's fun. And that's why it's not offensive. But on I completely understand the argument. And again, we're arguing old Roger, the oldest Roger Moore versus the youngest Sean Connery. And rewatching Dr. No, I started to come around to that. I'm like, I get it. James Bond probably should be 30, 35, and, like, whatever.
And as we've said for many other films, I think, you put Sean Connery in this film and it's better. It's how many times have we said that? What if we put Sean Connery in this film? It'd be so much better.
Yeah, if only Sean could be captured in a bottle and replicated so we could put him in every movie ever. And in the future, we'll have the digital technology to just have Sean Connery star in every animated Bond movie going forward forever. Whatever. Okay, YouTube dudes. K1 says, Dr. No has a super tight script and is a great spy movie, but most of the Bond stuff hadn't been invented yet. A View to a Kill is a fun romp with all of the tropes, plus Walk-In and Mayday, but it's just Goldfinger with microchips. I see how they are contenders for this debate. Also, someone should drown all of Silicon Valley. It sucks that I had to say that, because now this video's been banned. Thanks, K1. Murphy Chase says, I like both films a lot, but I'm going to have to go with Dr. No. I think A View to a Kill is super underrated, and it's got a lot of fantastic elements, but Dr. No is still just such a rock-solid and perfectly simple movie that, in my opinion, only a few Bond films have risen above. Yes. Alan Giles says, love them both, but I'd have to say Dr. No wins it for me. Simple story, but well told, and Connery nails the role from the word go. It's crazy seeing how much of the winning formula is there with the very first movie. I do think Dr. No himself is slightly overrated, though. I love A View to a Kill as well, especially for the villains. But Dr. No is just pure Bond, and it holds up incredibly well, and my opinion on it has never really dwindled. In the grand scheme of things, I would probably place it just outside of the top 10. Ethan Toyce? Dr. No is leagues better. A View to a Kill is good, but one of Moore's worst. A View to a Kill has bloated pacing issues, while if anything, Dr. No could have used an expansion on the final act if the budget were there. Rematch with the Dragon, Honey's Crab Torture, Obstacle Course, Bat Guano Mine, Giant Squid Fight from the novel. I'm reading it now. I haven't gotten to those things, but I'm suddenly really excited to read the book.
Just to point out, I don't know if we did talk about this, but the part with the crabs was intended to be filmed, and then there was an issue filming it, but that's something
that's
that
to his
was
point.
going to be
Like,
happening.
if they were to make it now, it would probably have that.
Yeah.
Ethan continues, A View to a Kill, like The Man with the Golden Gun, chooses to focus more on the villains, although fucking amazing protagonists, at the expense of Bond, while the few moments Bond does get are accredited to Moore's stuntmen, but that is more the editor's problem than it is Moore's age. A View to a Kill gets better as it goes. The Paris chase, horse race, conveyor belt fight, scuba scene lack fangs, while the PTS, fire escape scene, and everything following are top-tier Bond and a great send-off for Moore. The shotgun fight would have been my fave part if it weren't loaded with rock salt. I do not care about Moore's age and would not complain if he did one or two more, but you have to address it. Cut down on the crazy stunts and more Bond just wasting people a la Death Wish. Octopussy did this very well, which is true. I just really don't understand the hatred of the rock salt scene, because that's part of Stacey. It's not like Bond pulled out a gun loaded with rock salt.
I think for me at least was that he gets shot with the villain or one of the henchmen gets shot with rock salt. We already see that they have guns. And I know you pointed this out. They're like, well, there's after Stacey. And I'm like, yeah, but there's another guy there now shooting the rock salt guns and has has the Walther PPK. And then he gets up and he's just like, I'm not dead. And then, the fact that you add that shot of him going, I'm not dead, that just adds to the goofy and silly and over the topness of the film.
Sure, but the guys were there just to intimidate her, not to murder them.
I don't care, but
it works
then
fine
you
for
have
me.
A guy with a gun, and it's like, well, then why aren't they using their weapons if this is what the scene is? And then it just becomes a scene of antics and him, be like, oh, I'm sorry, grandfather, and it's just silly.
No, she's a geologist. Rock salt makes sense, and she's not trying to hurt anybody. No, I won't shut up.
NaCl.
I don't hate these parts. I don't.
Sodium chloride. Okay.
That's the second worst thing you said tonight.
Continuing.
She's a geologist. Rock salt makes sense.
It does.
How about just rocks? Not even salt, just rocks.
Okay. Keep going. Sorry.
Moving to Reddit. Dominican Boy 02 says, I think Dr. No is the better film. I enjoy View to a Kill as it is my guilty pleasure. Key phrase. But Dr. No is a solid film from start to finish that started it all. It's not played with any over-the-top moments or wacky gadgets. It's just pure spy espionage. True. A View to a Kill has its ups and downs, which makes it a fairly decent Bond film, in my opinion. I have it just about in the middle of my list. Bond 16 says, so since I've actually watched all your episodes and regularly commented on them, yes. Hi, I'm Nikolai. This is Nikolai Quack. What's up, Nikolai? Let me express how insane you are for even considering putting it above Dr. No. I mean, it's bad enough that by knowing your ranking, I know it's going to go above OHMSS if you're considering this, but Jesus Christ, man. We get it, Nikolai. You and McCurdy can off and go watch Secret Service and each other's dicks. Like, we get it. You want to put that at the top. It's fine. It's fine. But for the rest of us, it's like it failed to live up to what it wanted to do. I'm getting off topic. I love you, Nikolai. On a more serious, non-rant note, though, Dr. No is superior in so many ways. It doesn't have a bizarre horse plot that leads nowhere. We've been through this, though. The horse plot directly plugs into Zorin's backdrop, and it uses the microchips.
I haven't even touched on this, but he does make a point that the horse plot's like a thing that happens just to lead to like, how does Zorin use the thing? Oh, it's a microchip. And you're like, oh,
it doesn't lead to the end of the movie or anything.
The only other thing is that, like, or at least the information that we get from that is that Zorin is paying off what's her face, and so we learn that new information, and then she becomes a part of the plot. But like outside of that, horse has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. It's just microchips.
It's the funding. It's a means to funding his operation.
He's the outstanding horse of the sales. He'll be shown last. We expect him to fetch over $3 million.
The discovery of the horses and how they're breeding the horses leads to Mortner, which literally leads to where he came from. Zorin is a horse, like figuratively speaking. He's one of Mortner's breeding horses.
I get that, but like a better movie would have led that to being like this is a part of the, like, I feel like the horse plot or how whatever he does with the horses, like, wouldn't that make me feel like, maybe a part of his plan is creating super serums, like super soldiers or some kind of super serum, but we don't really get that. And that's where I'm like, there's something that could have been there. And I know, okay,
like instead of a Zeppelin, they should have, the horse race should have been the end of the movie instead of a Zeppelin.
Or something. But I'm just saying that, like, I know, like, the Marvel films have probably covered the super soldier serum, like, to death now. But like, there is that little bit of like, okay, we've done this thing to the horses, that we've made these really good horses, and we have this special device that we put in them and all this other stuff. And I'm like, that could have been used other parts of the film, and we just never saw that. Like, had Bond faced off against somebody who was just like an ordinary person, and all of a sudden now they're super strong.
Like,
and he's like,
Mortner at the end, like, pulls out the serum and like injects it into his neck, and then he's
something.
Like, I will avenge Max. Yeah.
Something, you know what I mean? Like, it could have added to the film, and then the fact that you have his age lurking there too. I mean, like, I'm touching on things that is very much in the Captain America films.
Yeah.
But like, you could have alluded more to like, Connery's old now, or not Connery, sorry. Moore is old now, and like, he can't put up with these other guys.
Roger Moore injects himself with the serum, and then in the next movie, he's Timothy Dalton.
Exactly.
I'm young again. Like every so often, the old Bond actor injects himself, and then suddenly he's replaced with a young actor. Now I'm Pierce Brosnan.
I will say that. I will say this. Saying it out loud does not help.
Okay. Nikolai continues, aka Bond 16. You've been doxxed, Nikolai. It doesn't have a Bond actor so old that he wouldn't do any of his own stunts anymore. The only solid thing it has going for itself are Mayday and Zorin, and that's just not enough. Sorry. Dr. No is a better movie and a better Bond movie. Totally can see that. Spockadile says, I still think Dr. No holds up as a better story. It's a little slower as one might expect given it was a low-budget movie in 1962 compared to an established adventure franchise in 1985. However, I kind of dig the slow detective-style writing. Generally, these are both movies that I've grown to appreciate more lately in different ways. Dr. No for a well-written spy adventure movie, and A View to a Kill for a wacky Roger Moore movie that's ripe for drinking games. Dr. No is 15 in my personal rankings. A View to a Kill is 17, so I understand how you think it's a tough call. ATW1221 says, Dr. No for sure. Sean Connery just personifies cool throughout the film, without a doubt. Dr. No himself is a top 5 villain for me, and other than the lack of gadgets, it's amazing how much of the Bond formula this first installment created. There's even a car chase with an explosive finish, which is goofy. I mean, it's like, if that scene didn't have, well, I think they're on their way to a funeral, it would have been ridiculous. It's worth it for that moment. But like the first chase scene ever, they literally just turn off the road and immediately explode. And like, whatever, but it's
yeah, because there's a thing in the way, and so he's able to navigate under.
He goes under it,
crane,
and they can't.
So they just they're like, and then they turn.
It's like,
I'll give you that, because I was going to talk about it, and I was like, yeah, the chase scene's not the best in the Bond series, but it's like, again, I a little bit knowing the history behind the movie, I'm like, it's not a Spy Who Loved Me. They don't have a supercar.
Whatever.
They don't have the budget to afford this crazy chase scene, which I'm sure the chase scene in the car alone cost the same amount as the whole movie. For Dr. No. You know what I mean? So it's like, I was like, whatever. But again, like you said, the Connery looking over with that one-liner just...
Without it would have been terrible. It made that scene.
It's those moments, though, that are throughout that movie that are... severely lacking.
Roger Moore doesn't have a Bond joke in this one. That breaks my heart.
Yeah.
So, okay. Anyway, he continues.
It's definitely lacking.
Yeah, he continues. A View to a Kill, on the other hand, has great villains and a good pre-title sequence, but otherwise is a real snooze. Stacey Sutton plays the most forgettable Bond girl in the series. Bond doesn't do much in the mines at all. Zorin kills most of his own henchmen. If you want to be objective about it, Dr. No is one of Connery's best performances. View to a Kill is one of Moore's lesser efforts. Zorin is a great villain, but Dr. No outdoes him. Again, that's like kind of our debate here. Honey Rider is one of the most recognizable characters in film, and certainly Bond movie history. Stacey Sutton is not.
There's something I wanted to add to that.
That's like an iconic argument.
Like, okay, but let me define something about iconic that we really have never touched on. And I think I kind of cemented in my mind when I was watching Dr. No. Because one of the things that really stuck out to me is how many times a character is introduced in Dr. No in such an image. Like, you're given an image when you see that character, where A View to a Kill doesn't really do that at all. Like, we know who James Bond is by that point.
We don't have like a baccarat scene in a casino.
But like, if you you can like instantly, like, you're like, oh yeah, that and that's kind of defining the iconicness of the films, but like, and that even goes double for Goldfinger, double for Odd Job. But like in Dr. No, the scene where we first introduce Sean Connery, that image, that clip of I'm Bond, James Bond, has been used like thousands, millions, billions of times. And not just that, but not just that scene. It's also like Honey Rider coming out of the water. She's given enough of a moment that it's like an indelible image in your head to be like, this is the character. And then we learn about that character. And like, we don't really get that in A View to a Kill at all. And even Dr. No gets that moment. Zorin's like in a boat and he's like, Dr. No, it's like we lead up to seeing what Dr. No looks like for the first time. And even to like seeing his hands and we see his feet at first, and then we see his hands and we know his hands are deformed. And then finally we see his image and we're like, oh, this is Dr. No. It like, they build that up. Whereas like Zorin, it's just like, this is Zorin, you know, same with Bond, same with Stacey. There's just nothing that really grabs your attention.
Well, I'm the guy who made the case that your Bond intro, there's so much you can do with that. And with this one, it's literally just like, oh, there's Bond. He's skiing.
Yeah. It's kind of like you're writing a paragraph and you don't, like, you might have this really well-written draft or a middle part of your body is like really great.
Yeah.
But like, there's no intro to it. It's like, here's my thoughts and then draft. And like, that's how I feel about A View to Kill.
But my whole thing is like, pretty much every movie has that Bond's in a casino gambling, and like, does every movie need to have that to be iconic? But then, I mean, the counter argument to that is like, well, Charlie, what's iconic about this movie? And it's like, I don't know, the Golden Gate Bridge.
Really. The Golden Gate Bridge
Like,
thing is kind of like it's memorable at least. You're like, oh yeah, that was the one with the on the like it's a good
like Mayday riding out and blowing up is like
that's
the
a good
movie
image
for me. You
yeah,
know,
that's a good image
movie.
too.
Yeah, it's great, but does it beat anyway? Okay, so moving ahead. Sneaky Bond says, it depends on which criteria you're basing your rankings. If you're considering quality, I don't think A View to a Kill bests Dr. No on any quality except for music and villains. Dr. No has a cooler Bond performance, stronger Bond girls, better locations and cinematography, a tighter story, and it isn't held back by any silliness besides the dragon. And a couple other things, but whatever.
I would make the argument, though, with the cinematography, that's kind of an up-in-the-air thing, because as we've been talking about, like,
modernizing and all that.
The modernization of the two films. Because even going back and watching Dr. No, I'm like, yeah, this film was made in 1962. Like, it's very, the way the lighting hits all the actors, it feels like it's been made on a stage. And even when they're on location, the lighting isn't the best. It doesn't really, it feels
they
like
do day for night.
And
you can't even see
you can see the
scenes,
cracks
like, whatever.
too. Like you can see the moments where like a car passes by and the cameraman's there, or when he's in the phone booth. Like you see those little like, oh, you can know they're making this movie. But like, that's where I'm like, I think A View to a Kill probably has better cinematography, but that also is years of filmmaking
after 14 films and It's just it is bigger. Again, it's like. It's bigger. Is it better? That's what we're discussing. He continues, but if I'm in the mood for Bond, I'll choose to watch A View to a Kill more often. That's what I said, right? Like it's enjoyable. It may not be a better movie, but God damn it, I enjoy it more. In fact, I choose just about any Bond over Dr. No because each film does something more with the basic formula, whereas Dr. No simply establishes the formula and that's it. I guess that makes it less interesting, even if it is objectively better in quality. So if you were ranking the movies by watchability, A View to a Kill might prevail over Dr. No, but for me, I rank Dr. No at 13, while A View to a Kill is further down around 17 to 19. Spockadile responds with, this is a good take. I agree about choosing most over Dr. No based on entertainment value. Despite its silliness, I have a great time watching A View to a Kill, although I don't know if I agree Dr. No even established the formula. I think it simply laid the foundation for one formula used in Bond movies like From Russia with Love, OHMSS, and For Your Eyes Only, that more grounded spy story. The more traditional Bond formula I don't think was established until Goldfinger, as we talked about in depth, but I'm being very pedantic.
It's a solid take.
Don't shoot the food, says Dr. No all the way. I'm a huge fan of A View to a Kill. It was the first Bond film I saw in a theater. But Dr. No is a stunning achievement. Blowing it off because it's rudimentary is a mistake. Again, it's not calling it rudimentary isn't like blowing it off. It's just like calling it what it is. It should be endlessly praised for how it invented the Bond formula out of thin air. It has great sets, the unveiling of the score, a great opening titles, a supervillain, etc., but more than any of this, the line, that's a Smith & Wesson, and you've had your six, is probably the single best line in the entire series.
I'm working for... It's a Smith & Wesson, and you've had your six.
This is the big bang of the Bond universe and should be appreciated for this much more than it is. It baffles me that people downgrade this film because it's barely a Bond film or whatever. Stupefying, stupid statement. Again, for the millionth time, we're not saying it's bad because it's simple. The question is, does simple perfection trump something that's bigger and potentially better? And that's why this is such a hard decision. It's like downgrading our arguments by just saying that like it's simple, it's bad. Like none of us are saying that.
Scott, it's old and it's boring, like, McCurdy. Shut up.
We all fucking love every one of these movies. Except one or two. Anyway, the Phantom Stranger 07 says, I am going to dissent with popular opinion and place A View to a Kill above Dr. No. I believe that everyone has pointed out valid facts about both films, but I just lean a little more toward A View to a Kill in this case. As previously stated, Dr. No has a very straightforward and rudimentary plot, but there is nothing wrong with that. Amen. I will say that I find the good doctor a tad on the boring side for a Bond villain. I like the premise of a mystery man on a mystery island working for Spectre, but that is kind of where he loses it for me. He's a very shall we say, hands-off, pun intended, villain for the most part, letting his henchmen and lackeys do most of the work. In fact, he has only a brief physical fight with 007 before meeting his demise. Also, I don't think that Dr. No was ever shown anywhere else but in his base on Crab Key, and I'm not sure that there is a real reason for that. Now, if you look at A View to a Kill, Zorin is shown out on location in several different areas, including San Francisco, the Kentucky Derby. It's not the Kentucky Derby. As Scott would say, you simple-minded the mine in Silicon Valley, etc. I will grant that he is also sort of hands-off as well, but at least he gets out of his house. True. I also feel like the Zorin character has more depth to him as well. Then there's Mayday. Mayday is a very interesting character as well. She kills for Zorin, as she is under the impression that he loves her, if he's even capable of that. But then, when the truth is brought to light, she makes a quick decision to sacrifice herself in order to derail his entire plan. I think even Bond was shocked when he realized what she was going to do. Yeah. I could go on, but allow me to wrap this up by saying that I give A View to a Kill the edge over Dr. No, and it is a close edge due to the characters having more depth. Plus, it gets extra points for Sir Godfrey. Lol. Yeah, and again, that's why we took a week off to reconvene now, because it's like, which is it? Like the Simple Perfection or like the 14th movie that's like big and has story? Alpesh AC says, comparison is the thief of joy, so quit it. And I basically told him to f*** off. Like, we're not stopping the show, Alpesh AC. We're only here to compare things. And that quote, comparison is the thief of joy. Comparison is the thief of joy is like us not comparing ourselves to Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan has 10 million followers. Like, It says nothing about meticulously comparing Bond movies until you puke or get really, really f***ed up. Harm's Way says, it's just a matter of taste. But I think most people will put Dr. No higher, partly due to nostalgia. Yes, Dr. No started a film series, A View to a Kill ended Moore's tenure. Trying to put all that nostalgia aside, not an easy thing to do when talking about Dr. No, I'll still say that Dr. No is the better film. Both films have a solid narrative, but Dr. No has a better cast, especially a better Bond, and a few scenes that stand out more. A View to a Kill has a better soundtrack and more impressive action. The horse racing and the way it's integrated into the story is really clever. Again, I agree. But the film sort of runs out of steam once the setting is changed to San Francisco. Although it comes back to life when we are at the Golden Gate Bridge, but overall, I say Dr. No is a more even film. Sure. You should use tier ranking so you can get away from these impossible comparisons. 9! GM Dark says, hi, guy in his 60s here. So, older than Roger Moore. Okay,
When the
gotta be
film
honest. Yeah. Gotta be honest, I've never particularly liked Dr. No. Sure, Connery never looked better, but so many of the things in it are not quite there. The Bond Connery plays in that one isn't the same guy he plays in the rest. He's very much a 50s idea of a great white savior throughout. Oh, God, we're bringing race into this. Barking orders out to the natives.
Jesus.
What?
Let's stop there. Let's not read the rest of that
Critical
comment.
race theory in the house. Shockingly,
crossed the line.
two-dimensional
We've crossed the line.
attitude towards women and anyone he considers socially beneath him. What fucking 60s era hippie? Is this George Lazenby? And the number of times he kills that poor defenseless tarantula. How many times does he whack that thing with his shoe? 10 minutes? Half an hour? Every time I see that scene, I'm obliged to point out, Jimbo, you got it first whack, mate. Fuck's sake, calm down. And then he hits it some more. My God, by the end, what could possibly be left to hit? What would you call that? A quantum of tarantula, possibly? Who the fuck is this? Connery's Bond is very, very different in his subsequent films. More egalitarian. Yeah, he's definitely more egalitarian. He hits men and women. Much easier to like. Yeah, in Dr. No, you do get that iconic, you guys drink for him, and you've had your 6, but bit with Dent, but dear God, guy literally just shot an unarmed, inexperienced geologist clearly out of his depth and crapping himself, who probably could have given up more information if only he wasn't quite as well ventilated as he ends up. I mean, Bond didn't need him anymore. I've always ranked Dr. No both first and last. Interesting. Is it better than A View to a Kill as a piece of cinema? Infinitely. Dr. No, worse than all, is at least the original Bond movie, and A View to a Kill, love it though I do, is a straight rehash of Goldfinger, not done with any of the panache of the original, and with a guy in the lead who was stiffer than my grandfather at the time he, bless him, my granddad, passed away 6 years earlier. I love Roger Moore. He spelled Roger wrong. He's spelling a lot of things wrong. I love Roger Moore. I do. And A View to a Kill for me has always got its place. But as a movie, it's insignificant. Dr. No actually changed cinema. Sure. Cinema, I don't know, but like.
I would argue yes. And I could go on a rant on that, but he's right. It did. I mean, think of it like this way. Like
what cinema?
Okay. So as much as Star
Wars did, like. Yeah, like a blockbuster.
Think about it at the time. Like there was no what action series like today we have the Marvel films, right? Or superhero movies in general, right?
Yeah.
Like what series of films were there back in the 50s and 60s? You had westerns, and they were still popular up until the 50s, but there wasn't an action spy movie like Dr. No. And then when Dr. No hits the scene in 62, like that was like the spark off point when you had all these. Again, like I talked kind of about this in Dr. No in some of the other films, but like because of Dr. No, you get all of this spy gambit, right? You get My Man Flint, you get Secret Agent Man, you get The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Like you get all these Mission Impossible, all those television shows.
Yeah, sure. It changed. It birthed a genre, but it like changed filmmaking forever.
Maybe where spy movies went from there, but then you have North by Northwest.
When you think of, and then again, like I've said this before too, is that
Thriller and Spy had been there.
It birthed a genre is different from
to it though.
Star Wars changed cinema. It invented the blockbuster. I mean, Jaws, whatever. But like, Star Wars
created
films like it shifted the way movies were made. Versus, did Dr. No like?
I think it did. I mean, it did create like it was kind of the proto blockbuster of its time. Like it didn't. I mean, it made a lot of money for. I mean, we've talked about how much money they had to put into making that movie, but it definitely changed cinema for the better, I think, for creating that kind of characters and that kind of story. There wasn't really anything prior to that people you could latch onto. I mean, yeah, North by Northwest was there, but like most people kind of connect that with just Hitchcock doing Hitchcock films.
I mean,
this became its own thing, and it kind of
Psycho was like a prototypical blockbuster.
Psycho's
but
a proto.
I don't know about Dr. No
slasher films. You know what I mean? But this also kind of goes back to why I always kind of say the first 6 films are the only real James Bond movies, because after that it's just like rehashing old ideas.
Yeah.
And this movie does that too.
Totally. Yeah. Of course.
So.
Okay. So he continues, as for Dr. No, loads wrong with it, and I don't tend to pop it in the Blu-ray player very often, but you have to give props to its place in the world. That movie put Bond on the cultural map. A lighthearted rehash of a much better film in the first place really doesn't, as enjoyable as I find View to a Kill to be. It is not in the same league of cinematic history, not remotely even close. Believe me, I do understand your sentiments here, but Dr. No is just one of those things you've just got to give it full props because it is the first Bond movie. That is actually reason enough. All the best with your tube thing. Let us know what you've decided.
Tube thing.
Your tube thing.
Your YouTube.
The YouTubes.
Your tube thing.
Yeah, the tube thing. I get it, but I've said from the get-go that I really don't like these arguments that require this outside knowledge. Now I know, like everybody knows Dr. No was the first movie, but if you were to watch these in a vacuum where you don't have that historical knowledge, you don't know what movie came first. So I just don't see that as grounds for it being better or worse. Knowing that they only had $1 million is outside knowledge that just watching the movie you would be unaware of. So I just don't like those arguments. It just reminds me of that god-awful moment in history when everybody was like, did you know Leo actually ate raw fish in The Revenant? that means he deserves an Oscar. And I'm like, yeah, but that movie sucks. I don't care what trivia you know about it, like how cold it was or how disgusting the fish was. The guy doesn't deserve an Oscar for rolling around on the ground for 3 hours and wheezing. But, once again, outside knowledge bleeding into how people are judging something rather than judging it on its own merits. Notice a trend here. Some people did, some people didn't. But, like, most people, they're not talking about the Dr. No story. They're like, it was the first movie and it's landmark. And I'm like, I get that. I fully understand, but does that automatically mean that Dr. No's better because it established certain tropes and shit? What this all comes down to is story versus style. Nobody's arguing in favor of Dr. No's story. They're just like, oh, he's sitting there playing Baccarat and it's great. And McCurdy, I'm not talking about you because you've argued your point to death.
This is me saying that you're wrong in that you're saying that it's just story versus style. Me saying that like you can't just judge a movie by simply its story if the other elements don't support the story, like the performances or
that's why this is so hard.
And that's the problem with The View to a Kill is that you're like, it's got great story, but like, I'm telling you that like everything else that is attached to this monstrosity that is A View to a Kill, as much as it's an enjoyable film to watch, doesn't really hold up the kind of story it's trying to tell. Yep. And whereas Dr. No, everything a part of that film, the cast of characters, the atmosphere, the music, the action, all of that still supports the story that is being told. A simple one, be it that is a mystery story, and then trying to find out who the bad guy is at the end, trying to discover the evil plot, whatever. That all being said, that movie, everything about it supports it. Like I think that's boils it down, and I don't see it as you're seeing it as like style versus substance. I would make those arguments about something like Batman, like the two Batman movies. Batman versus The Dark Knight, right? The Tim Burton Batman, a lot of people really like that movie over The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight has a better story and kind of goes more in depth with a lot of stuff. But the first Batman movie still leaves the indelible image of like the costume, Jack Nicholson's Joker, the Batmobile, all that stuff's way more iconic in those two films. But like that's a flavor thing. But I think here it's different in that like I think the stories are equally good. I just think Dr. No at least has everything supports it. Whereas the other film, it's like, yeah.
Well, okay,
a little
dude,
old. You know what I mean?
On that note of Batman, right? Like I wrote in my notes at one point that like there's a certain thing that happens where people are like, and I think it's the case with Secret Service. I don't want to go down the Secret Service rabbit hole, but I think that with Secret Service, there's a certain element of like, it's cool to be retro and people like an older thing and then they shit on the newer thing. And so you're right. Like some people are like, yeah, 1989 Batman is better than The Dark Knight. And it makes people go, oh, because objectively speaking, Dark Knight is the better movie. Objectively speaking. But then there are people who are like, no, actually like in the same way that I like vinyl. Vinyl just sounds better. And you're like, you fucking hipster. You goddamn hipster. Because they attach a certain amount of like, there's like this ineffable quality to like this old thing that you don't understand, but I get it because like I'm probably smarter. I can't articulate why, but like I like the older thing and like you don't, which like I'm retro, bro. You know what I mean? Like people just attach themselves to something older or again, I only like foreign films. I only like older films. New stuff's garbage. You don't get it. And that's where I'm a little more cynical, where I'm like, no. How about the movie just didn't really live up to what it was trying to do, But anyway, when it comes to this, I reject the argument that because Dr. No is not new and that it's classy and all that. Like I reject that argument because it's like we're trying to look at all the Bond movies and they can't all be the first one that established it. The question is, do the newer ones? Again, my argument of like, it's technically bigger. Does that mean better? Bigger doesn't always mean better, like with Thunderball, but in this case, is bigger better? So here's what I'll say. I'm going to throw this out there and y'all let me know how you receive it. Basically, when I really started thinking about pretty much everything McCurdy's been saying throughout this and how to apply the Dr. No and Goldfinger era to View to a Kill. And basically for me, what A View to a Kill needed was the Joker Batman interrogation scene right? Something that helps us get to know him, Zorin, and possibly see his way of things and possibly root for him, right? In the same way that like maybe you root for Drax or any bad guy really, where you can see their side of things. And even if you disagree with them on a moral level, you're like, I understand why they're doing it. Look to Goldfinger's golf scene. This is really where my thinking started to go. It's fun and cool as hell and classy. Whereas A View to a Kill, we have this horse riding scene instead. It's certainly not as cool and classy because it's turned into a bit of an action scene instead of an interesting dialogue scene between our hero and villain. That's the key. Our hero and villain. In A View to a Kill, we get so much Zorin. He's a super active bad guy, but not with Bond himself. We miss out on a relationship between Bond and Zorin. There's literally only one dialogue scene between them where the mask is off, right? And mask off meaning like they both know who each other is. Every other scene, one of them's pretending to be something he isn't, like Zorin pretending to be innocent, Bond pretending to be St. John or whatever. So let me propose a change, right? And this is, I'm going to go the route of like, here's how I would change the movie to this is where A View to a Kill would have been Goldfinger, Dr. No classy. Let's say instead, Zorin, who's already, like, so this is like where they're having their horse riding scene, right? Like Zorin's already on to Bond at this point. He goes out on a ride with Bond, continues talking to Bond on this ride, each of them provoking each other, right? Each pretending that they're not aware of the other's real self. It's just two guys out and about having a chat, much like Bond and Goldfinger had many times. A battle of words. Remember, Bond knows that Zorin probably has a microchip in his jockey whip so he can cheat in a race, right? So Bond continues provoking Zorin, who provokes back until he makes the wager that if Bond beats him in a horse race, he can keep the horse. Maybe then Bond points out that he couldn't possibly win against a horse that's been tampered with, again, provoking him. And this is when Zorin plays his ace in the hole and activates the microchip and not his horse, but in Bond's horse, throwing Bond over a cliff to his death, or, you know, like falling into a river or something, and dying, or so Zorin thinks. This could easily be intercut with Tibbett's death for better effect. Bond falls into a river and off a waterfall or whatever, like Zorin's like, that motherfucker's dead. Bond finds the car with Tibbett in it, and this becomes Bond's lowest point in the film. He's been defeated and humiliated. Either way, we needed a scene like this to better grow a relationship between Bond and his adversary while giving us a sense of why Zorin is doing what he does. What we got instead were 3 interactions. There's literally 3 interactions between them and then the fight at the end, but nothing that really grows a relationship between them, as well as building up Zorin's motivation. And this is important in Bond movies. His motivation seems obvious. Again, like I said, he's just like a psycho, wants to take over the world. Backstory. But to have it delivered to Bond in the style of Goldfinger or Dr. No would have been a nice touch, a Bond movie touch. Like, okay, imagine Zorin, you know, he's been riding with Bond a bit. They're talking, and like his backstory comes out, and he's talking about being a concentration camper, being a camper.
We lived in the camps like animals. I learned from my mother that people are like sheep. I vowed to never be a cattle. Like this horse I'm riding.
There's a little visual metaphor. He's riding the horse. People are sheep, people are cattle, people are horses. I'm on top of them, right? Like something as simple as that would have made this a little bit more of a profound movie. We needed to hear the backstory from the man himself and not just from Chuck Lee from the CIA, right? Like, and that would have, at that point, maybe you start, even though Zorin's a psycho, maybe you start rooting for him because he did, like, he came from shit and he's like, you know, like coming from a concentration camp, you might be like, you might have a complex that requires you to run the world so that you won't ever be put in that position again. Like Magneto.
Well, not
or something.
only that, you're experimented on. Your mother's experimented on.
Yeah,
and
exactly. So again, like I'm never going to be an animal again. You know, everybody else is a sheep but me. All in all, it's a difficult sell because A View to a Kill is so much better in so many departments. It's not just bigger, as in the case of Thunderball, where it wasn't necessarily better. It's bigger and better in my book. But the counter argument is one of nostalgia and class, and I get it. That's something that's hard to beat, especially when the movie does have some ridiculousness. But Dr. No does have the actual sit down with Dr. No, where we get to know him and his strange motivation to glorify Spectre and the whole East-West thing. And you really cannot make the argument that Dr. No could have been better than it is. In this department or any other department, Dr. No's relationship to Bond, in which he keeps Bond alive to potentially recruit him, is more of a compelling relationship than Bond and Zorin ever have together, and their complete lack of a connection.
I only gratify your curiosity because you're the one man I've met capable of appreciating what I've done.
And on these grounds, I'm willing to concede that Dr. No is better. Because we have so much Zorin, but we don't have a Bond-Zorin relationship. And, like, that's key. That's fucking key.
It's funny you say that, because all the movies that we've talked about have a villain-hero relationship. It's just like there's not really much here in this film. But, like, I mean, even the analogy films we were talking about, like Batman and The Dark Knight, like Batman 89 has at least some kind of connection where they even have moments together, and you get a little sense of Joker's twistedness, and then even like him realizing like, oh, you killed my parents, and then he's like, I killed a lot of kids, and like realizing like it never really mattered to him because he killed tons of people in his lifetime. And then you got The Dark Knight, where it's like there is that interplay between, I mean, you can go on about it. It's like the chaos versus, or the immovable object versus a unstoppable force, and like that whole philosophical argument that they have between the two about chaos and order, and like that's there. Yeah. And then Dr. No, we talked the East and West thing and how he just doesn't give a shit about either side, and he's like, fuck him.
Yeah. Dude, okay, imagine The Dark Knight though without the Joker interrogation scene. Like let me put it in perspective. It would be just like A View to a Kill, like where Zorin's just out there doing stuff, and then Bond's out there doing stuff, but they're not interacting, as opposed to Joker's out there doing stuff and Batman's out there doing stuff, but then they have these key scenes where they are able to kind of articulate their worldview.
Yeah.
And that lends to like, because again, like going all the way back to Dr. No, where, Dr. No's like, be a criminal, and Bond's like, why become criminal? Like it's like, Dr. No's like, you could be like me and you could have money and riches and all that. And Bond's like, but why? And so that's where it's like good, evil.
The successful criminal brain is always superior. It has to be. Why become criminal?
On those grounds, I'm like cool with it being below Dr. No. And I assume you guys are cool with that. You don't want to argue anything else, right? We've gone on long enough.
No, not at this point.
Well, actually, no,
let's put it below For Your Eyes Only. Let's put it below Octopussy. You guys are cool with it being below Dr. No, above For Your Eyes Only.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't think we need to rehash why.
They really are so close.
Yeah, I mean, and like the idea that A View to a Kill is one of Roger Moore's worst, I disagree with that wholeheartedly.
I don't think it's his worst, but I do think it's not one of his better ones. So,
and again, just like that guy said, his age doesn't bother me, but I guess the extent they go to cover it up.
Yeah, it's the how to make him look younger. Put a pretty lady on each of his arms, and it's like, oh, he's hot now. But it's like, okay, I can only buy that.
Yeah.
When before they had who like Maud Adams, which is more level,
like almost like his age.
Makes sense. Yeah,
his age. Well, in the last episode, Nathan said, are they making a concerted effort to have older Bond girls to compensate for Roger Moore's age? And Hugh McCurdy said, not in A View to a Kill. Like, not at all. So I'm going to go ahead and lock it in, guys. After like 2 goddamn weeks, we've figured it out. Goldfinger, fuck you, still at number 1. From Rush with Love, number 2. Spy Who Loved Me, number 3. Man with the Golden Gun, number 4. Dr. No, number 5. View to a Kill, welcome, number 6. Number 7, For Your Eyes Only, number 8. OHMSS. Number 9, Thunderball. Number 10, Octopussy. Number 11, Live and Let Die. Moonraker at 12. Diamonds Are Forever at 13. You Only Live Twice. You fucker, you're still at 14. Okay, that was a marathon through the Roger Moore movies. And
that's why, like, when I rewatch these movies, I always get stuck on the Roger Moore films, because it's 2 very distinct eras, and it's not like as you can breeze through Connery pretty quickly. You get to George Lazenby, and then you're like, oh, I just got one more Connery film, and I really like Roger Majesty's Secret Service. But then it's like, okay, now we're at the Roger Moore movies. You get the first 2 films, which for some people are hit or miss. For me, it's a miss. I like the first one, the second one not so much. But we've talked about that.
We've
talked about that. And then you get the next two that are almost like remakes of each other in a weird way with The Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker. And then it's like, so that's like one distinct era. But then the second era is like the John Glenn, like, let's rehash and remake the films instead of finding what's new and hip. So it's like, let's do the first one, let's do Honor Majesty's Secret Service. The second one's kind of From Russia with Love, but not. And then the next one's Goldfinger. And then more should have been done like after You Only Live Twice. It takes a long time to do that.
You said You Only Live Twice. He should have been done after For Your Eyes Only?
For Your Eyes Only. Did I say You Only Live Twice?
Yeah, it should have been done. Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
So, and again, I really can't see Dalton in A View to a Kill. Like, I can't see anybody but Roger Moore in A View to a Kill. Again, because of that scene with St. John Smythe.
Mayday, where have you been? I've been waiting for you to take care of me personally.
I can't see anybody but Roger Moore in that scene. And I'll get to why, because once we introduce all the Bonds, I'm going to go through I'm asked all the time, who's your favorite James Bond? And I'm like, fuck you. I'm not going to pick. I'm going to explain to you how they're all different. We're going to get to that. But in the meantime, McCurdy, let's honor the guy.
Here's to the late Sir Roger Moore.
Roger Moore, the man. If you don't like this dude's movies, your soul's dead. I'm sticking to that, and I'm drinking. Thanks, Roger. Wait. Whoa. Wait. We forgot somebody. We forgot Miss Moneypenny. McCurdy. Again, one more time. She doubled the amount of movies that Roger made.
Lois Maxwell, she had played the character Moneypenny for 14 films. And it makes sense, that this is also her last movie, considering that they kind of interact age-wise together. She could have been in another life married to Bond. And they always had a playful relationship. So it just makes sense that this is also her last film. And she doubled, like you said, she doubled the number of films Roger Moore had ever done, who had done the most films. I want to reinstate that enough. He had done the most films in a row that are official Eon production Bond films. So here's to Lois Maxwell.
To Lois.
You can't even make a consistent argument other than saying bad movie, good movie, better guns, better women. Like, that's a bad argument.
Where are you going, McCurdy? Where are you going, McCurdy, you sad piece of shit? Oh, bad movie, good movie. Oh, sorry, McCurdy. My fucking fat McCurdy.